Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Deku Was Trained by His Father, Part 1. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
The three heroes were a few minutes away from their destination in the transport. There were rumors that something was attacking a top-secret research facility in the Arctic. The only hint they had was a 5-second video showing a creature attacking the researchers, and the reports were vague. They were all thought to be dead. Finding and eliminating the creature while rescuing any potential survivors was their mission. The Swedish heroines were Inga Svensdotter and Frigga. A peculiarity. Prescience. Her ability to foresee the future up to 2 days ahead of time and anticipate her opponent's movements gave her a significant advantage in combat. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing 215 pounds, she was a blonde, blue-eyed, Amazonian woman with a large battle axe and the muscles to use it swiftly. She wore fur-covered armor and a helmet. Then there was the Italian hero Hercules, whose name was Antony Orally. Quirk. Godly might he was as strong as his mythological namesake, with the ability to lift up to 3,000 tons. He weighed a powerfully built 290 pounds, had bright green eyes, dark hair, and was bearded. He was a head taller than Frigga. He usually wore ancient garb with a lionskin helm, but today he wore a heavy coat, Arctic-appropriate pants, and boots. His lionskin helm was the only item of his typical attire that was on display. Lastly, there was Japan's number 2 hero at the moment, Midoriya Hisashi, whose hero name is Phoenix. His super strength and fire breath allowed him to lift up to 70 tons and release a fiery conflagration up to 2,750 degrees Celsius, 4,982 degrees Fahrenheit, from his mouth. He weighed 350 pounds of muscle and stood an even 7 feet tall. He was the least dressed of the three heroes, wearing his typical attire of yellow boots and gloves, a red suit with a flame pattern, and an orange cape and phoenix-shaped helmet. With the aid of an integrated jetpack, his cape could solidify into wings, enabling him to fly. In contrast to the well-known world's greatest hero, the symbol of peace, All Might, Phoenix was a well-known hero for traveling the world to help other heroes and was sometimes referred to as the symbol of unity. Orly and Midoriya talked as they traveled, having collaborated with each other a dozen times previously. That recipe for chicken gnocchi was amazing. My boy said it was the second best thing he ever ate, Midoriya Hisashi said in English, the common tongue of the three heroes. When Orly said, only the second best, she laughed. Yeah, unfortunately, my wife's katsudon is his favorite dish, said Midoriya with a smile. Mama's home cooking is the best, Svensdotter remarked, laughing. Yeah, nothing much can, Midoriya remarked, his eyes distant. I think this is the last time I'm leaving Japan, for a few years at least. Svensdotter inquired, you are giving up being a hero? With concern? No way, Midoriya replied. But, I missed a few things. Things I can't relive. Like my last anniversary, or my boy Izuku's first steps. As Svensdotter noted, that hurricane near Japan redirected a lot of flights, so it wasn't your fault. Still, Midoriya replied, I shouldn't have missed it. I swore I'd be a better husband and father than my father, but, feels like I don't spend enough time with them. ETA is in 5 minutes, stated the robot that was operating their vehicle. Inga Svensdotter, who had to play the hero Frigga, said in a rough voice, okay, we need to focus now. Frigga took out an iPad and watched the video, saying, remember, the primary mission is to locate and destroy the monster. Preferably intact enough to study, but we don't need to die capturing it. According to their observations, the creature resembled a massive white gorilla with 4 arms, a mouth full of fangs, and an exposed brain. Go for the brain, that's got to be its weakness, Frigga replied. All right, said Antony Orally in the hero Hercules' booming voice, let's get this monster. They all saw the remains of the research facility when their plane touched down. There was lab equipment everywhere, along with blood and fragments of human remains. Let's go, Frigga replied. I'm saving my quirk for the battle, so I don't know what is going to happen. Be alert. Right, the other heroes concurred, and the trio entered the building with caution. There were more carnage and destruction scenes throughout the facility, with body parts and equipment strewn everywhere. Bastardo, Hercules swore as they went by the remains of a woman who had been ripped in two. Phoenix had the sudden sensation of burning needles piercing his skull. He grasped his head. This was something he had experienced far too often. Hello, son, his father's voice said in his mind. What's wrong? His companions asked, and Phoenix moaned. What do you want, you monster? Phoenix instructed himself. The mental image of his father laughed again, then walked away, and then the white gorilla monster smashed through a wall. Well, consider this as my way of warning you. This is a test for your abilities. The monster you're about to fight is one that I created. Just like you're something I made. I made you naturally, and I made this creature in a lab. Hercules shouted, "Watch out!" as he shoved Phoenix and Frigga away as the monster lunged toward him. Hercules stopped the white gorilla monster in his tracks by grabbing two of its arms. Abruptly, lasers shot through Hercules' head from the gorilla monster's eyes. Antony, Frigga and Phoenix cried out as the monster's four arms tore their comrade's lifeless body in half. Frigga swung her axe and charged the monster, shouting. She used her foresight to avoid the creature's swipes and swung hard, severing one of the gorilla monster's arms as it did so. Frigga barely stopped it with her axe as the creature roared and blasted lasers from its eyes. The monster stopped its attack when Phoenix rushed at it and used his super strength to slam a fist into its side. Phoenix barely escaped the monster's attempt to grab him as it swiped at him, leaping back more quickly than most people would have thought a man his size could. Frigga struck the creature with her axe, but it only just penetrated its side before snatching her arm. Frigga kicked the gorilla monster hard in the mouth when it attempted to bite her arm off. In response, the monster twisted her arm until it broke and her bones ripped through her flesh. The creature slapped Frigga away as she screamed in shock. Phoenix screamed, "Inga!" and sprayed the monster with his fire breath. With a roar of agony, the monster fled from them. When he went to his comrade, he discovered that she was still alive but that she had a broken arm and was bleeding from what appeared to be a fractured skull. Phoenix said, "I'm getting you out of here," and raised her. The gorilla monster roared behind him as he dashed out of the building. "Take off now," he shouted as he arrived at the transport. They were struck by something as the transport started to take off. In some way, it flew, and Phoenix saw that it was the gorilla monster. Phoenix shouted in Italian, "Che cazzo." He had learned some good Italian curse words from his deceased friend. Phoenix jumped out, activating his jetpack and wings while the hatch remained open. "Vai a farti fater." Phoenix screamed to attract the monster's attention as he saw it attempting to rip a hole in the transport. He then flew directly at the creature and spun around in midair to give it a forceful kick to the head, causing it to release the transport. The creature began to descend, but then two enormous wings appeared on its back, and it pursued Phoenix while launching lasers from its eyes. Phoenix swore, "Merda," as he swooped to dodge the lethal beams. Phoenix moved and dodged as quickly as he could to avoid being blasted as the two opponents flew around, waiting for an opportunity to fire. When the monster momentarily stopped and flames roared out of Phoenix's mouth, burning the monster's eyes, he saw his opportunity. Phoenix flew at the blinded creature, determined to use his bare hands to exact revenge, as it began to flail around, roaring in pain. As he struck the monster's head repeatedly, he swore in Italian, Japanese, English, and a dozen other languages he had learned while traveling the world. He made a mistake because the monster suddenly encircled him with its three remaining arms and gave him a firm squeeze. Phoenix let out a painful scream as his lungs were punctured by the sudden shattering of all his ribs. Hisashi felt as his helmet was ripped from his head as the monster seized it with one of its arms. The creature tightened its grip on Phoenix as they fell, slamming into a crack in the Arctic ice after Phoenix blasted its head with fire. Before reaching the bottom, they bounced around the crevice's walls. Hisashi escaped the monster's hold and stood up, throwing up blood. Despite the pain in every part of him, he knew he had to complete this. Hisashi approached the shattered creature and clutched its head in his palms. He screamed as he ripped off the monster's head, placed it atop its body, and then used his fire breath to blast it as hot as he could manage. He let his fire run wild until he eventually regurgitated more blood. Midoriya Hisashi, also known as Phoenix, sank back and moaned. "Shit," he said in his native Japanese, "he got me good." He was already experiencing internal bleeding and a weakening of his body due to his pierced lungs. In agony, he extracted his phone from a pocket in his suit. Amazingly, it remained whole. His wife, Inko, answered the phone when he dialed the number on it. Inko said, "Moshi Moshi." "Inko," Hisashi sighed. "Listen to me. The monster, I got it, it's dead. But, he got me good. I don't think I'm going to make it." Inko on the other end told him, "Don't say that, just hold on, I'm sure the transport will find you," before continuing. Hisashi began to lose his vision and replied, "If it doesn't, know that you and Izuku made my life meaningful. Before we met, I only fought against evil. You gave me something to fight for. Tell Izuku, be brave." Hisashi. "Hisashi, answer me." After a month, Phoenix, also known as Midoriya Hisashi, had never been found. Rescue workers had searched the area as soon as Frigga was found. Weeks passed, but they saw hardly any trace of him. Nevertheless, Inko and Izuku remained optimistic that he would be located. Hisashi had experienced dreadful battles in the past, and he had always prevailed over the odds. Because he had survived so many battles, some even claimed he was immortal. A knock on the door interrupted Inko as she was preparing dinner. When she opened it, All Might and Nezu, the principal of the illustrious hero school UA High, stood there. She immediately asked them, "Has there been any word of Hisashi?" Years before, All Might had discovered Hisashi on the streets. All Might had taken the young homeless boy to Nezu after he had shoved a woman out of the way of a raging villain. Nezu agreed to take on the role of guardian for young Hisashi after All Might saw something in him. Nezu informed her, "Inko, the search for Hisashi has been cancelled." Inko remarked, No, you can't, he can't," as Izuku approached to witness his mother begin to sob. Izuku said, "Mommy, where's Daddy? The snowstorms are picking up, they can't continue the search, and that part of the Arctic regions has very little shelter, or food sources," Nezu went on. All Might raised a worn helmet that resembled the head of a phoenix. Nezu said, "His helmet is all they could recover," as All Might silently gave it to her. All Might felt guilty and saddened by the tears that Inko and Izuku were crying. Despite Hisashi's background, he had seen the boy's potential for goodness and had inspired him to become a hero. Hisashi had surpassed his own expectations and gained nearly as much international fame as he did. This marked the end of his journey. After a week, Phoenix's funeral was a lavish event. Many people from all over the world came to show their sorrow for the symbol of unity who had died. All Might, Kathleen Bates, also known as Stars and Stripes, and Joseph Freeman, also known as Wolfheart, from America, Frigga, Salam, from Egypt, Big Red Dot, from Singapore, Maureen O'Connell, also known as Phi Queen, from Ireland, Simone de la Cruz, also known as El Negro Santo, from Mexico, and many more were among the heroes from a dozen different countries who attended. They all sent their condolences to Izuku and Inko. While little Izuku clung to his mother, Inko had to rely on her friend Bakugo Mitsuki as she tearfully accepted their goodwill. The heroes protected the Midoriya family from the media, photographers, and anyone else who attempted to speak with them following the funeral. They owed it to their fallen comrade to allow his family to mourn in silence. As they arrived at their home, Nezu started making tea while Inko and Izuku sobbed uncontrollably and clung to one another. Nezu vowed to do everything in his power to protect them. Time heals all wounds, so the saying goes. After a while, Inko and Izuku came to terms with the loss of their father and husband. Nezu frequently assisted Inko and paid them a weekly visit. Since Nezu had been Hisashi's father figure, he felt obligated to care for the widow and orphan of his adopted son. Because All Might was the role model he needed to replace his father, Izuku looked up to him even more. He and Inko would frequently play together, with Izuku saving her from fictional villains while wearing an All Might onesie. He would frequently approach her with the hero names he wished to have when he grew up, such as Mighty Phoenix and Captain Might. But regrettably, tragedy struck them once more. Izuku's dream was dashed at the age of 6 when the doctor informed him that he was quirkless. The mutation that indicated he would ever exhibit a quirk was absent from him. When Inko visited her son's room that evening, she discovered him watching a video of All Might coming to the rescue once more. He held his father's helmet and said to her, "Mom," with tears in his eyes, "even without a quirk, can I still be a hero?" Poor Inko couldn't handle it. Tears filled her eyes as she approached him, embraced him, and sadly said, "I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm sorry." The young boy realized that he would never be able to fulfill his dream. As time went on and Izuku's friend Bakugo Katsuki developed his explosion quirk, word spread that Izuku was quirkless. Izuku was pleased for his friend as everyone applauded the boy's strong quirk. However, Bakugo Katsuki became conceited because, like many others, power corrupts. He denigrated everyone he perceived as inferior to him, but he held Izuku in particular in low regard. Izuku quickly became his favorite punching bag after he started bullying him, frequently returning home with burns and bruises from young Bakugo. Inko tried her best, but she had to work and couldn't always be there for her son because she was a widow and single mother who had used all of her savings to find a husband. Inko turned to food as a coping mechanism for her own melancholy, and as time passed, she began to gain weight. As the principal of UA, Nezu had his own duties, but he did his best. Thus, 6 years went by as time went on. The Arctic Circle, this exploratory mission, was being escorted by Frigga. The Arctic was dangerous, even during the summer. In the event of a disaster, They needed someone who could guide them to safety. Frigga closed her eyes and concentrated as soon as they landed. In order to help forecast the weather and make sure they would be prepared for it, she used her foresight quirk to look ahead to the next 2 days. She looked for the best world by sifting through the potential futures. She kept looking until she came across something. Someone that she never imagined seeing again. As she opened her eyes, she exclaimed, "Holy Mother of God." The top scientist, American David Shield, asked her, "What's wrong?" "We need to take a detour. I saw something I never thought I would, and if we do this right, we may do the impossible. Are you willing to trust me?" replied Frigga. With a nod, David Shield said, "Just show us the way." The scientists took a sharp turn to the east after Frigga led them along the majority of the path they had intended to survey. 10 hours from their starting point, Frigga followed her vision and discovered a sizable ice crevice. According to Frigga, he is here, at the bottom. David Shield questioned her. "Who?" "A dear friend," Frigga told him. "I need the climbing equipment." She prepared to descend as Frigga and the scientists hurriedly prepared for a climb down the crevice. "Are you sure about this?" "It's been 6 years, Frigga. No human being could survive that," David Shield persisted. Frigga gazed at him and remarked, "I don't know how, but he is there. And I owe it to him to bring him home. My visions have never been wrong." Frigga let her vision guide her as she descended as fast as the gear would allow. When she eventually reached the bottom, she had descended 500 meters. The monster's frozen remains were visible to Frigga. It was obviously burned to the bone. After pausing and spitting on the remains, she took a few more steps and eventually located the one she was seeking. His long-ruined cell phone was still in his hand, and his body was frozen solid. "It's time to come home, Hisashi," she said, gently raising him to his feet. After 2 days, Hisashi felt something, much to his surprise. He smelled medical alcohol all around him, felt needles in his body, and heard medical equipment beeping. When he slowly opened his eyes, he saw a roof of some sort for a medical tent. He had to blink and look around carefully because he had a tube in his throat and nose. He noticed that Inga was reading a Swedish book called Barbarian Boldness in the chair beside him. When he let out a loud breath through his mouth, Inga looked up. She shouted in Swedish, "Hisashi, you're alive," and over her shoulder, "David, he's alive." David Shield then materialized. The American scientist exclaimed, "Holy cow," as Hisashi gave him a feeble smile. He was one of his international friends. His jetpack and wings were constructed by David Shield. "You're alive. I thought Frigga was crazy. How?" Hisashi blinked, the tube in his throat preventing him from speaking. Hisashi coughed as David assisted him in taking it off. It went deep inside him. Hisashi remarked, "Well, that was some experience." Hisashi laughed feebly and said, "After that last call I gave her, Inko'll freak. Then I turn up alive and well, she'll kill me." Inga and David recoiled when his wife was mentioned. Hisashi asked, "What's wrong?" to them. David began to check his vitals and asked, "Hisashi, what's the last thing you remember?" Hisashi went into great detail about the battle with the monster before making his final phone call to his wife. "I don't think I got brain damage, thankfully," Hisashi responded as David probed him on a variety of topics, including math, long-term memory, and even personal information. Hisashi felt a growing sense of dread in his stomach as he responded to questions. Then he glanced at Inga and David, who both appeared a little older than he had last seen. Not significantly, but the sense of dread in his stomach grew like cancer as he gazed at them. Hisashi's heart began to race. "Inga," he said, "how long was I out?" Touching his shoulder with sadness, Inga said, "My friend, it's been 6 years since we fought that monster." The medical equipment began beeping faster and louder, and Hisashi's breathing became labored. No, no, he said in his native Japanese. "I can't, I promised them. No, that's impossible." Tears streamed down his face as he thought about Izuku and Inko. 6 years later, Izuku is 11 years old. "I missed more than half of my son's life." He couldn't have predicted his current appearance after all this time. As Inga attempted to reassure him, he eventually opened his eyes. In English, he asked her, "How am I alive?" He looked at him and replied, "We don't know. Somehow, your cells managed not to be damaged, despite the fact that you were frozen. Plus, all your injuries have healed in that time. We examined you, your ribs were certainly broken, but they're all as good as new now. And your lungs were indeed pierced, but they also recovered. And this doesn't make sense, since your quirks aren't related to healing at all." The Japanese speaker Hisashi sighed and uttered, "So that bastard's experiments worked, damn him." He turned to David and Inga and said, "I'm going to reveal my worst secret ever. That might explain how I survived." But I want two things from you first. Promise me you won't tell anyone unless I give you permission. Both David and Inga nodded, saying, "We promise, Hisashi." Inga asked, "What else?" She was informed by Hisashi, "I need a phone. I need to call my family." Japan's Midoriya resident Izuku, who is now 11 years old, and Inko had just finished dinner when Inko's phone rang. Out of habit, she answered the number even though she didn't recognize it. "Moshi Moshi?" "Inko, hi," said a voice. The dead man's voice. "Hisashi," Inko whispered, then passed out. Izuku said, "Mom," and shook her. Izuku recognized the voice on the phone. "Inko, what's wrong, Dad?" "Izuku, is that you, man? You sound a lot bigger than the last time we talked." Izuku said, how, to him. "It's a long story, son, a really long one, and I'll tell you and your mom as soon as we're together again, I promise," Hisashi said to him. Izuku returned her phone to Inko as she woke up. She wiped away her tears as they began to form. Inko questioned, "How'd I know this is real? In the past, people have attempted to trick me, including money-grubbing individuals, paparazzi seeking interviews, and sick people who enjoy torturing others. Confirm to me that you are my spouse. Tell me how we met, and tell me something only he would know," she said. "It was 14 years ago now," Hisashi said, taking a deep breath on the other end of the phone. "I had been on patrol in the Coruscant Ward's 5th District. Gang activity had increased, and the Savage Slashers were one such gang that was going on the rampage. I flew down between them and the women after spotting a group of them harassing 3 of them. It was one of the hardest fights of my life. I must have been slashed at least a dozen times, but I kept them off the women and gave them time to flee. There were 10 of them and 1 of me, but I didn't let that stop me. The Savage Slashers all had blade-related quirks. Some of them made swords or spikes out of their bodies, and 1 of them had claws. Their leader could make his body as hard as steel and transform his hands into swords. In spite of this, I beat them all until their boss, Steely Dan, was the only one left. He possessed the muscle to support his fighting skills. The bastardo refused to go down no matter how hard I hit him during our 10-minute battle. At last, he managed to stab me through my left kidney. I slammed my fists as hard as I could into Steely Dan's temples because I thought I was dead, and that finally knocked him out. I collapsed. I was bleeding hard when one of the women returned. "Are you all right?" she asked me. "Oh no, you're bleeding bad. There's a hospital close by, just hang on. It was you, Inko. I'll never forget that green hair, or those big green eyes as you helped me up and used your jacket to try to stop my bleeding belly. I had to lean on you to get to the hospital, but we made it. You would visit me every day until I left the hospital. And that was the day I lost my kidney and my heart," Hisashi continued. By the time he finished, Izuku's and Inko's tears were streaming down her cheeks. Inko practically screamed, "Oh Hisashi, my darling, I'm sorry I ever doubted you." When Izuku learned that his father was still alive after all these years, he could only cry. They heard Hisashi sobbing over the phone as well, and he said, "I'll be home in a week, at Tokyo International Airport." Through her tears, Inko was able to say, "We'll be there, I promise." Using his pet name for his wife, Hisashi said, "See you then, Inkshan," and then he hung up. As they sobbed tears of relief and happiness for all the time lost, Inko and Izuku held each other. At Tokyo International Airport, Nezu joined Inko and Izuku. The idea of seeing Hisashi after all these years gave Inko and Izuku butterflies in their stomachs. "I look horrible," Inko muttered to herself as she examined her appearance. She had put on a lot of weight in just 6 years. Izuku smiled and reassured his mother, "You're fine, Mom," adding, "Dad loves you, no matter what." Izuku was anxious, too. If his father found out that his son was quirkless, how would he respond? As the symbol of unity, Phoenix was adored worldwide and ranked as the 2nd most popular hero in Japan. Izuku, on the other hand, was just defenseless, useless Deku. "There's his flight," Nezu said, indicating the flight board where Hisashi's plane had finally touched down. They all 3 went to the unloading dock and waited for him with bated breath. Hisashi stood head and shoulders above nearly everyone else in the airport, which helped them spot him among the crowd after 20 minutes of waiting. He was there, searching the crowd for his family with his ruby-red eyes and disheveled short-cut white hair. When he eventually saw them, he pushed his way through the crowd while yelling, "Inko! Izuku!" He was carrying a backpack on his back and was wearing a long-sleeved red shirt, black pants, and shoes. The crowds began to move to avoid the big man, and Inko and Izuku were unable to contain themselves. They ran as quickly as they could to him, shouting, "Hisashi!" and Dad. When the three of them came together, Hisashi dropped to his knees while his son and wife, who were smaller, rushed to his big, strong arms. Any words they attempted to exchange were drowned out by a torrent of tears from the three of them, tears of joy at their reunion and sorrow over the time they had lost. They remained that way for so long that a custodian was eventually called in by the airport staff to wipe away the tears. Nezu approached and put a paw on Hisashi's hand after they had stopped sobbing, saying, "Welcome home, Hisashi. You were missed here." After leaving the airport, Hisashi, Nezu, Inko, and Izuku boarded a bus to Ikeyama's, a small, family-run Korean barbecue restaurant that is Hisashi's favorite. Inko filled her husband in on everything that had transpired during his absence. She didn't know how to put it, though, so she didn't say that Izuku was quirkless. With butterflies in his stomach at the idea of telling his father he was quirkless, Izuku remained silent while his parents conversed. When they first arrived at the restaurant, everything seemed to be going as usual. They were all enjoying a barbecue as a family. However, Hisashi was not a moron, and he quickly noticed Izuku's lack of talkativeness, and it worried him. Did I make a mistake? Is he upset with me because I vanished? Over half of his life was lost to me. Can I compensate my boy? Both Hisashi and Izuku felt as though they were treading water by the end of their meal. After lunch, Nezu and the Midoriya family left and went home. Hisashi sat down on the couch when they arrived at their home and entered before noticing the shrine. Although it wasn't a large shrine, it was clearly dedicated to his memory at the time they believed he had passed away. Inko had kept it tidy, and the shrine featured a photograph of Hisashi holding his newborn son and grinning with joyous tears on the day of Izuku's birth. When it finally hit him, his wife and son believed he was dead for 6 years. Hisashi gazed at his shrine, paralyzing Inko and Izuku. Inko remorsefully remarked, "I forgot to put that away. I'm sorry, darling." "Don't be, Ink-chan. That day, when I called you, I thought I would die as well. I should have died. However, here I am, alive and well. It's not your fault." Hisashi shook his head and walked over to his wife. He kissed her and then knelt down to put himself on Izuku's level. "Izuku, I know I've missed over half your life. The last time I saw you, you weren't even in kindergarten yet. You're about to start middle school soon. I'm sorry, son," Hisashi said to him. Izuku let Hisashi go and sobbed as he said, I don't have a quirk." Izuku squeaked as he finished saying this, and Inko began to cry as Hisashi looked at him and continued, I can't be a hero like you. I'm so..." Izuku had tears as he hugged his dad's big neck and said, "I don't hate you, Dad. But, I have to tell you something. You have nothing to apologize for." Hisashi gave Izuku a quick embrace before saying, "No matter what, you will always be my son. And I will always love you." He then met Izuku's eyes. Izuku asked Hisashi, "Even without a quirk, can I still be a hero?" while wiping away his tears. As she waited for her husband's response, Inko watched silently, her heart pounding in her chest, fearing what would happen. "Answer a question for me first, son. Why do you want to be a hero?" Hisashi said, his eyes serious. Izuku didn't hesitate to say, "I want to be the kind of hero who brings a smile on everyone's faces, just like All Might and you." Hisashi looked at Izuku and said, "Being a hero isn't easy. You'll be risking your life almost every day. I've seen good heroes die doing the job. Many people will love you for it, some will hate you, and some won't care at all. You'll get hurt, even if you're careful you can still get badly injured. It's a dangerous job, Izuku." "I know, but I still want to do it," Izuku said, nodding. He nodded, and Hisashi said, "Then I'll help you be a hero." Hisashi looked at him and said, "I'm warning you though, it won't be easy. Without a quirk, you'll need to work 100 times harder than others in order to be effective. It'll be super hard, son. You think you'll be able to handle it?" Izuku exclaimed, "I can do it," with stars in his eyes. "All right, then I'll start a plan to train you to be the first quirkless hero," Hisashi said to Izuku. But Inko entered the room. "It's never been done before. No one has ever been a hero without a quirk." Hisashi nodded and said, "You're right, Ink-chan, but no one has ever been frozen for 6 years and survived. And yet here I am. Although no one in our world has ever been a hero without a quirk, for nearly a century before quirks appeared, there were fictional heroes and superheroes, men and women who were equipped with technology, magic, and alien genetics. But among them, there were still superheroes who had neither quirks nor powers, but they made up for it with discipline, training, and the best devices they could create. At one point, people said that such things were impossible, but now 80% of people on Earth have quirks, and the number is still rising. People would have referred to our world as impossible back then. Izuku was practically pulsing with excitement as Hisashi returned his focus to him. I'm warning you, son. This will be a lot of hard work and exercise if you truly want to be a hero, Hisashi said. A lot of sore muscles are in store for you. Do you truly think you can manage that? Izuku nodded and said, Dad, I'll do anything you ask of me. Hisashi gave him a nod in return, saying, all right. We'll begin tomorrow after I devise a plan for your training. Hisashi prepared dinner that evening for the first time in years. He had gathered numerous cookbooks during his travels as a hero, and tonight he celebrated his return with a Mexican dish, an a la Mexicana. Izuku was giddy with excitement for the remainder of the day in ways Inko hadn't seen in years, and while it warmed her heart to see Izuku acting so excited, she was still deeply concerned. After dinner, Hisashi offered to clean up, but Inko refused, saying, You've been gone for years, darling. It was a tasty, spicy tuna dish. Hisashi had always preferred foreign cuisine over Japanese and frequently prepared recipes he learned abroad before his Arctic encounter. Izuku and Inko devoured it, though they had to eat it slowly due to its high level of spice. You should spend time with your son and plan out his future, she advised him, and so Hisashi and Izuku spent time informing Izuku about fictional superheroes without powers, such as Batman, Blue Beetle, the Punisher, Black Widow, and a few others, while also organizing Izuku's training schedule. After an hour, they had devised a training schedule, and Hisashi advised Izuku to get some rest. You're going to have a difficult day tomorrow, son, he said. Izuku nodded enthusiastically and prepared for bed, saying, therefore, you should make sure to get plenty of rest. Are you sure about this, Hisashi? Inko asked Hisashi when they were by themselves. When we found out that he was quirkless, I was at a loss for words. How can we be certain that he will succeed at a hero school despite this training? I know our son, Hisashi said, glancing at her. He is selfless, compassionate, and determined. A hero can be made or broken by these factors. He won't be alone, either. In order for him to stay up with other students, I intend to get him books about equipment and technology. You mentioned at dinner that although he has a bright mind and excellent grades at school, he lacks the skills necessary to build his own equipment. He can do this, Inko. But he'll need all our support to do it. Trust me, and if you can't at least trust in him, can you do that? After swallowing and nodding, Inko, who had a nervous expression, said, I'll support him with everything I have. Izuku was soon in bed, and Hisashi looked at Inko and said, Care to join me in the bath? In a silky voice after he was certain their son was asleep. Looking down at herself, Inko turned red as a tomato and said, but I'm not the woman I was, Hisashi. After we found out Izuku was quirkless, I let myself go. I must be twice as big as when you left. Hisashi gave Inko a smile before lifting her chin and giving her another kiss, saying, that just means there's twice as much to love. Inko felt herself melt as he did so. He always knew just what to say and do to make her heart race. As though she were weightless, he raised her up like a princess and gave her another kiss. Inko managed to say, hold on, let's at least get cleaned up first, as they made their way to their room. They cleaned themselves up in their bathroom. For the first time in 6 years, Inko saw Hisashi's body and was reminded of his difficult life. As one might anticipate from a man who was once Japan's #2 hero, Hisashi had a mountain of hard muscle, but he also had scars. Only someone as close as she washed his back would have noticed the scars from the night he met, which had long since faded along with others. However, there were additional scars. There were indications that big needles had been repeatedly inserted into him all over his arms, legs, spine, and chest. The evidence of his father's horrifying experiments on him. Hisashi never shared his early years with anyone, only revealing that he had inherited his mother's fire breath quirk and that she had been a hostess named Keiko. Her eyes and hair were red. He said even less about his father, calling him a villain who had manipulated her after she gave birth and killed her because he was tired of her. Hisashi was unaware of the extent of his father's experiments on him. He only knew that his life had been a torment before he was able to flee at the age of 13. Hisashi found the memories upsetting, and he consistently refused to give Inko more information when she asked. The only secret they shared was that Inko regarded her own body. Her shoulders were slumping, she had skin folds she felt ashamed of, and her belly was softer and more protruding. She hadn't shaved between her legs either, not anticipating that Hisashi would still want her. Seeing her hesitancy, Hisashi must have embraced her from behind and suggested, let's head to the bath. In order to accommodate Hisashi's size, their bath was fairly large. It could easily accommodate 3 average people or 4 small people. However, Hisashi had Inko near him, in fact, on his lap. Inko blushed because she could feel how much he cared for her. He hugged her and said, "Ink-chan, no matter what, I'll always be yours. You're the only woman for me, no matter how big or small you are." As he spoke, his hands moved over her soft body, stroking her breasts, thighs, belly, and all the way to her back, where he squeezed it tightly. "How can I hate the woman that gave me my son, who was always there when I needed her? I never would have been the hero I am if I didn't have you standing behind me." He carried her to their bed after lifting her out of the bath and drying her off because Inko was too aroused to do anything. Before kissing Inko's quim, Hisashi climbed on top of her and proceeded to kiss her neck, breasts, and soft belly. He began licking her, spreading her lower lips. His tongue and lips were still magical, and Inko was fighting the urge to scream so she wouldn't wake Izuku. However, Hisashi paused, kissed her again up her body, and used his big, powerful, and agile fingers in place of his tongue. Coming out of his fingers, Inko had to cover her mouth. After taking his fingers off and licking them clean, Hisashi kissed her and positioned himself. Inko admired his size in bed because he was a big man overall. As he filled her, Inko groaned into her hands as he slowly and gently slid his cock inside her cunt. Like so many times before, they soon began to move together. When Hisashi finally returned and he inserted his seed into her womb, Inko reached up and drew her close to him, letting her groan and moan into his big, strong chest. Then, to his surprise, she turned them around and landed on top of him. "It's been 6 long years, darling, since I've made love. Are you ready to make it up to me?" Inko said to her husband. Hisashi simply nodded, and they resumed their sexual encounter. That night, Hisashi didn't sleep at all. "Wake up, son. It's time to start your training." Izuku's father's voice jolted him awake, and the 11-year-old boy yawned before shaking his head and getting up. "We're starting with a jog," his father said, before leaving his room. "Get some clothes that are good for running in." Izuku hurriedly dressed and left their home with his father. Hisashi was wearing a heavy weighted vest and had weights around his wrists and ankles. Izuku questioned him, "Dad, are you sure you can run in all that?" He said, "We'll see," and began to run. Izuku hurried after him. Izuku was breathless before they had gone very far, and Hisashi had to accompany him. "You'll get there one day at a time," Hisashi reassured him as they walked on. "It's your first time seriously training, son." They resumed their jogging along a route Hisashi had previously laid out after Izuku caught his breath. By the time they returned home, Hisashi's breathing had barely increased, while Izuku's had become labored. "This is important, Izuku," Hisashi said to him. "In order for you to be an effective hero, you need to train your body to have the right balance of strength, speed, stamina, and flexibility. The same with your mind as well. Not having a quirk is something you'll need to work extra hard to overcome." Izuku nodded as Hisashi took him to the training facility. He stored a number of kettlebells, dumbbells, and barbells inside that ranged in weight from 3 kilograms to 300 kilograms. A heavy punching bag, jump ropes, and grip strengtheners were also available. Hisashi removed his wrist, ankle, and vest weights once they were inside, exposing a pair of glowing green bracelets below. As Hisashi guided him to begin stretching, Izuku questioned, "What are those?" "Quirk nullifiers. Got them specially ordered. They're like the handcuffs heroes use to arrest villains. All they do is turn off my fire breath and super strength quirks. That way I can get a good workout without having to lift ridiculously heavy weights," Hisashi said while they were stretching. Following stretching, Hisashi guided Izuku through a series of calisthenic exercises, including burpees, squats, jumping jacks, push-ups, and sit-ups. While Hisashi performed advanced variations of all the exercises with ease, Izuku found the basic exercises difficult. Hisashi got Izuku a water bottle and gave him some time to rest because he was perspiring a lot. "You're doing fine, son. Exercise is a lot like walking. You need to learn to crawl before you walk, and then once you can walk, you can start running. We have 4 years to get you ready for any hero school you want. Like the old English proverb goes, Rome wasn't built in a day." Izuku exclaimed with excitement, "I want to get into UA, just like you and All Might did." The fire in his eyes was still burning brightly, despite his obvious exhaustion and perspiration. Hisashi grinned. "All right then. Last morning exercise, we'll do upper body workouts with weights. We'll be weight training 4 times a week, alternating between upper body and lower body exercises. After you get home, we'll be working on martial arts training, and that will be done 6 days a week along with calisthenics. We'll be jogging and stretching every day. On Fridays that will be the only exercise we do, to keep from overworking your body. Rest and recovery are the most important part of training." Izuku exclaimed, "Okay, and Hisashi gave him a pair of 5 kilograms dumbbells. Izuku found it difficult to lift the weights, but he kept up with his father and performed all 12 of the exercises correctly in all 4 sets. Their upper body routine included triceps extensions, hammer curls, shoulder presses, bent over rows and bent over lateral raises, biceps curls, and upright rows. Izuku felt reassured that he was just beginning his training when he witnessed his father struggle with 100 kilograms dumbbells. Izuku thought his arms would drop off by the time they were finished. As he began to massage his aching arms, Hisashi reassured him, "It will take some time to get used to, son, but once you do, you'll be able to push yourself to heights you never thought you could." "Thanks, Dad," said Izuku. "Let's get cleaned up. You got school, and I got a mountain of red tape and paperwork to get through before I can be a hero again. Everyone thought I was dead, so I got to prove it's not some stupid publicity stunt before they'll let me out on the streets again," Hisashi said to Izuku. Inko was already busy making breakfast when they left the home gym. She appeared a little worn out but more at ease than Izuku had seen her in a while. Hisashi exclaimed, "You're an angel, Ink-chan," and threw his arms out in a hug. Hisashi was stopped in his tracks when Inko responded by pointing a spatula she had been using to stir eggs at him. "Don't even think of covering me in your sweat this early in the morning, darling," she said, before proceeding to say, "Get showered first." As he went to get cleaned up, Izuku was relieved to see how quickly things had returned to normal. Hisashi simply laughed, and I could hear him murmuring, "You weren't too worried about getting my sweat on you last night." Izuku would never have known his father was a hero, much less Phoenix, the symbol of unity, if Hisashi hadn't shown him his hero costume when he was a little child. Even after all these years, his parents behaved like a typical, contented couple. It was pleasant. Izuku changed into his school uniform after getting cleaned up. Inko was dressed normally, while Hisashi wore a formal charcoal gray suit with a red tie. For the first time in years, Izuku sat down to breakfast with his parents, and he grinned. He thought he would have a good day. Izuku left for school after breakfast was finished and the kitchen was cleaned up, while Inko and Hisashi went through their documents to ensure they had all the necessary identification to verify Hisashi's identity. The hero Phoenix was going to have a long day. Izuku was mentally more excited than ever during his school day, despite his physical exhaustion. Even when Bakugo Katsuki saw how joyful he appeared, nothing could make him feel any less joyful. At lunch, the explosive boy said, "What the hell has you so happy, Deku?" Izuku exclaimed, "My dad's home, Kachan, and he'll help me become a hero," to him. The blonde boy was shocked to learn that Midoriya Hisashi had passed away. His parents had attended his funeral. It was all illogical. Young Bakugo said, "You finally lost your damn mind, Deku," and then he went off to spend the rest of the day by himself. Izuku saw his parents sitting on the couch after running home as fast as he could. Both of them appeared worn out. Hisashi appeared to be on the verge of passing out, and Inko appeared to be suffering from a migraine. Izuku declared, "I'm home," and then asked, "What happened to you?" "Paperwork. Red tape. Stupid bureaucracy crap," Hisashi grumbled. "I forgot about all the paperwork that goes into being a hero and setting up an agency. Even with those lawyers we hired, and All Might's help, it'll take at least 3 weeks before I can go back to work." He breathed a sigh of relief and got up. "Go get change, son. We'll start your martial arts training in 5 minutes." Izuku returned to his room and changed back into his workout attire. He decided to ask his parents to get him some more workout clothes soon because it felt disgusting. He noticed that his father had already changed when he came out of his room and that his quirk-nullifying bracelets were on. Then they returned to the home gym. The gym had enough space for them to spar and practice fighting, and there were mats to keep them safe. Hisashi's expression was grim as he said, "Okay, Izuku, I want you to get ready. I'm about to do the worst thing I've ever done, but if you truly want to be a hero, you need to get used to this now." Anxiously, Izuku swallowed and asked, "What's that?" "I'm going to punch you. Saying something will hurt, and actually getting hurt are two very different things. It's best if you learn what it feels like to take a hard hit now, rather than later, when it could cost you your life," Hisashi said to him. Then he struck Izuku in the stomach with his enormous fist. The little boy was struck, and the pain struck him with great force. Izuku dropped to his knees and fought the urge to throw up. He was unable to even moan in agony because he had been knocked out cold. Even Kachan hadn't hurt him this badly. It was worse than anything he had ever experienced. Hisashi placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder and said, "I'm sorry, son. But villains won't let you know when they're going to attack you. And they won't hold back either. No amount of training can get you ready for that, Izuku. This is something you need to learn the hard way." Hisashi assisted Izuku in getting up and then embraced him. I'm sorry, Izuku. If there was any other way to do this, I would. But being a hero is a hard path, so it's best if you learn this now. As a hero, you'll be in for even worse pain than a punch. Do you still want to be a hero? After catching his breath, Izuku declared, I still want to be a hero, no matter what. Hisashi nodded, all right, then. It's time to start learning martial arts. I can teach you 2 martial arts, and they're both very effective. The first is Jeet Kune Do, a style of kung fu that was created in the middle of the 20th century by a Chinese-American actor and martial artist named Bruce Lee. It's a simplified style, concentrating only on the most fundamental techniques because they work and then perfecting them. There are many ways to use Jeet Kune Do because different people fight in different ways. Pankration is the name of the other style I'll teach you. Perhaps the oldest Western martial art ever created, it is among the oldest martial arts in existence. Thousands of years ago, in ancient Greece, this style was first created. Its name translates to all the might, because you use every part of your body, your hands, elbows, legs, feet, knees, and grappling, to beat your opponent. Although the exact origin of pankration is unknown, legend holds that the ancient demigod heroes Theseus and Heracles invented it. Pankration is adapted into all forms of Western boxing and grappling. Competitive mixed martial arts shares many tactics and methods with pankration. Although it's not particularly ostentatious, the brutal style is effective. With these styles, I am sure you can become an amazing fighter. You ready? I'm ready, exclaimed Izuku. For the next hour, Hisashi taught Izuku the fundamentals of martial arts. Izuku was taken aback by the significance of stance and how it affected your movement, the various ways to throw a punch, and when and how to block and dodge. In addition, he was taught how to kick and the various targets found throughout the typical human body. I admit, martial arts has its limits in the modern era, Hisashi said at the end of the day. Some people have more than 4 limbs, some have no bones, some have tails or tentacles, but even then, there are some points that nobody likes getting hit. As they stretched at the conclusion of their training, Izuku questioned, like what, Dad? Their groin and eyes. Man or woman are neutral, a hard hit between the legs hurts. Although there are a few techniques to mitigate that, they're very rare. And as for the eyes, I have yet to meet someone that can take a poke there and not react, even if it doesn't do much damage, it still blinds them temporarily, Hisashi informed him. After Izuku gave his approval, they left for their second shower before supper. Izuku slept soundly after supper because he was too exhausted to do anything but get some much-needed rest. After 2 days, Izuku discovered that the lower body exercises were even more difficult than the upper body ones. He used weights for exercises like side lunges, goblet squats, deadlifts, bridges, calf raises, reverse lunges, and weighted lunges. Izuku's legs felt like they had turned to jelly by the time they were done. Nevertheless, he persevered through all of his exercises, doing as his father had instructed. Hisashi explained to him the more pragmatic facets of being a hero while he was training Izuku. How to keep his clothes clean, how to avoid chafing in his joints by using baby powder or cornstarch, and the significance of wearing a mask. According to Hisashi, you can't have much of a private life if everyone knows your face. Just think about All Might. There isn't a single photo of him on a real date or with a significant other, and the guy is so famous that he can barely use the restroom without someone noticing him. That's no way to stay sane. Trust me, son, when you become a hero, you learn to appreciate the little things like taking your girl on a date without being interrupted. That's one of the reasons why so many heroes dress up in bizarre costumes and masks. You would be shocked to learn that you wouldn't recognize Midnight if you ever met her outside of her costume. The costume serves many purposes. Depending on its material, it can protect you as well as keep your face safe, alert others that a hero has arrived, and inspire hope. In order to transform himself from Midoriya Hisashi into Phoenix, the symbol of unity, Hisashi also explained the significance of attitude, body language, and even the pitch of a hero's voice to help sell their image. He even demonstrated by striking poses with Izuku and deepening his voice to sound louder and stronger. Izuku studied heroes and their quirks whenever he had the opportunity, and in his free time, he worked to research fictional superheroes from the pre-quirk era. He watched movies and television shows and saw how many real heroes were influenced by the old fictional ones, either directly or indirectly. One of the original superheroes, Superman, was obviously the inspiration for the classic caped hero look, and Izuku observed that what made Superman amazing was not his literally earth-shattering power, but rather his compassionate and kind heart. The young boy realized that he would need gear to be a hero and make up for being quirkless, but he was unsure of what he would need. Izuku also mentioned quirkless heroes such as the Shadow, Batman, Blue Beetle, Batwoman, Black Widow, Iron Man, The Question, Punisher, and many others. Some of these heroes had incredible wealth that enabled them to purchase devices and equipment to help them fight evil, while others had none of these and fought with just their courage and fists. Hisashi and Inko worked to restore Hisashi's hero status in the meantime. His father appeared exhausted from all the laborious paperwork and red tape, but as soon as it came time to train, he appeared to resurrect like his namesake, helping Izuku become the best version of himself. Izuku, who had learned some of the language from reading and watching superhero comics and movies, as well as from listening to his father speak to English-speaking heroes he had met in his early career, heard his father say, "You're the man, David," over the phone one day. "Many thanks. I hope they can share knowledge. Tomorrow, we'll see." "Who was that?" Izuku questioned him. "David Shield, an old friend. He is an amazing, brilliant inventor, but he is not a hero. He was the one who got me and Inga in the Arctic and built my jetpack and wings. Melissa Shield is David's daughter. She shares your quirklessness. Despite the fact that she is roughly 2 years older than you, he believes she would be open to communicating with you online. He informed me that Melissa is a true prodigy at creating hero technology, even more brilliant than he is. Are you interested in meeting her?" Izuku was so taken aback by the idea that he could only nod enthusiastically. "All right, then, tomorrow you kids can talk to each other on your computer," Izuku said. "It will have to be around 8 in the morning due to the slight time difference." "Thank goodness it's Saturday tomorrow," Hisashi said. "Wait," Izuku remarked, "David Shield, such as the Nobel Quirk Prize winner, who was All Might's former partner, and created every one of his outfits, David Shield, huh?" "The same one," Hisashi said, laughing. "Meeting other well-known individuals is beneficial when you hang out with All Might." "Whoa." Izuku managed to utter his words. Izuku worked through his Saturday morning workouts with an energy that surprised his parents, but Inko assumed that her boy was simply too excited to meet someone like him to feel tired. Izuku was so excited at the prospect of talking to someone else who was quirkless and had such a famous father that he could hardly close his eyes that night, but he somehow managed to get enough sleep anyhow. When the clock struck 8, Hisashi started the video chat. The computers connected, and a picture of a young adolescent girl with long blonde hair and aqua blue eyes behind big round glasses appeared on the screen. "Konnichiwa, Daisy Melissa Shield, Hajime Shite. Hi there. I'm Midoriya Izuku, and it's a pleasure to meet you." Inko and Hisashi laughed, while David Shield on the other end laughed. The two children were so excited that they spoke each other's language and unintentionally interrupted each other. Melissa was the first to recover, saying, "You have pretty good English skills, Izuku." "Your Japanese is better than my English," Izuku uttered in a quivering English. "Do you want me to talk to you in Japanese? I speak Japanese quite well," Melissa said. Izuku acknowledged, "That would be easier for me." Melissa merely grinned and said, "All right, in Japanese. I've heard that neither of us has any quirks. However, according to my father, you still aspire to be a hero." Izuku's eyes brightened, and he told Melissa all about his father's training. Before long, they were talking excitedly about heroes, gadgets, and their goals. Melissa had long since made the decision that, if she couldn't be a hero, she would help the heroes with her equipment, and she had already made a number of incredible devices that demonstrated her technological prowess. The two lost track of time, and Inko reluctantly interrupted, saying, "Izuku, it's lunchtime." Izuku stopped when she said, "I made your favorite." The sound of her cooking his favorite dish, katsudon, rumbled loudly in his stomach like a sledgehammer. "It was nice meeting you, Melissa," Izuku said in English to his new acquaintance. Melissa said in English, "It was nice meeting you, Izuku," before returning to Japanese. "I hope we can chat some more," she said. "Goodbye." Izuku said, "Bye-bye," and shut down the computer. Izuku told his parents everything he could about his conversation with Melissa during lunch. It began long after the food was finished and lasted nearly as long as the conversation itself. Inko and Hisashi were pleased to hear him talk about his new friend, and as they went to bed that evening, Hisashi said to Inko, "Ink-chan, that was a great idea you had. I never would have allowed the two of them to speak to each other." "Well, if I've learned anything, it's that everyone needs a friend," Inko grinned. "She also seems like a very intelligent person. She might be the one to assist Izuku in becoming a quirkless hero." As the weeks went by, Izuku grew accustomed to his new life with his father. Training, learning about the past and hero gear, and conversing with Melissa Shield all became routine activities for him. Izuku was extremely happy with his new life, and he was able to realize his dream. Whether it was a full suit of technological armor like Iron Man, A belt full of gadgets like Batman, or perhaps just a few gadgets like the hero Spider-Man. Izuku didn't speak up at first because he wasn't sure what was wrong, but then he heard Inko throw up one morning, and that's when he realized that his mother had changed. She seemed a little more exhausted, and it wasn't like his dad added to her workload. They divided the chores equally, and Hisashi was happy to do anything Inko was too exhausted to do. Izuku questioned her. Speaking from the restroom, Inko said, "Izuku, I'm not sure. I believe I must purchase something. I'd heard that there was a flu outbreak." Izuku said, "I can get it for you, Mom," as she stepped out of the bathroom. Inko reassured him, No, I can handle that much. You have to go to school. I'll be alright." When Inko went to the store, she made sure to get some cold and flu medicine, along with some fruit and ingredients for rice porridge, just in case it was the flu. However, she thought about it and, just in case, she also bought a pregnancy test, a new hero magazine for Izuku, and a cooking magazine for Hisashi. At the time, Hisashi was out, all the paperwork had been completed, and he was preparing for a TV interview to announce the return of Phoenix. Inko's heart was pounding when she got home and drank some water. "Calm down, Inko, it's probably nothing, just a little flu is all," she tried telling herself, but the thought still worried her. She and Hisashi had been having regular sex since he returned, and it was almost like they were on another honeymoon or newlyweds. They hadn't always used protection, and she had forgotten to take her pills on multiple occasions, so it was very likely that she was pregnant. As she went to the bathroom and took the pregnancy test, her feelings were jumbled. She and Hisashi had discussed having a younger sibling for Izuku after he returned from the Arctic, but that had been years ago, and she wasn't as fit as she was now, and she had read that pregnant women who were overweight might face difficulties because of their weight, and she was worried that something might go wrong. On the other hand, she was excited about the prospect of having another child with her husband, such as when she found out she was expecting Izuku. They were still engaged when she found out she was expecting their son, and the wedding was scheduled for a year later, when more members of her extended family could attend. However, the news that she was expecting accelerated the process, allowing only her parents and a few nearby cousins to attend, while Hisashi gathered Nezu, All Might, the Wild Pussycats, and Antony Orley, also known as Hercules, as guests. Fortunately, they were married quickly enough that she was not featured in the wedding pictures. As she watched the pregnancy test, all of these thoughts were going through her head. One stripe appeared, followed by another, and the result was positive. Inko felt as though time had stopped as she reached down and felt her soft belly, thinking about the possibility of having a child inside of her. She went to their living room and stared at the test for a few minutes, allowing it all to sink in. She was expecting a second child. After calming herself with a few more deep breaths, Inko pulled out her phone and dialed Hisashi, who answered the second ring and said, "Hey, Ink-chan. Do you need anything picked up by me?" Hisashi inquired. "No, nothing at all, but I must tell you something. In person. Will you be able to return home soon?" Hisashi said, "Yeah, I'll be able to head home in about 10 minutes, as she overheard him conversing with someone on the other end. "Ink-chan, are you certain you're okay?" "I just have a very important thing to tell you." After saying, "I'll see you at home," Inko concluded, "I love you." Hisashi hung up after saying, "I'll see you soon, I love you too." Inko, who was quite a good tailor if she said so herself, made all of Izuku's baby clothes and occasionally decorated his clothes as well, usually with English words or phrases he thought looked cool. Inko prepared something special that she hadn't made in years, and she took out some yarn and knitting needles and began knitting her new baby's first clothes. Inko had just finished knitting a light blue baby hat when Hisashi arrived home. "I'm back," Hisashi said, and entered the living room. When he saw what Inko had knitted, he stood motionless, his mouth agape, and then he walked forward and Inko gave him the baby hat, which was so tiny in his big hands, but he grinned down at it as if it were a precious gem. They didn't have to speak, but after a few minutes, Hisashi said, "We need to think up a name soon." Hisashi leaned down and gave Inko a hug, and she returned the hug. Inko assured him, "It'll be all right, darling, we have 9 months." Izuku was astounded to see his father so joyful when he got home. "Are you going to be a hero again, Dad?" he questioned him. "Yeah," Hisashi replied, "but that's small potatoes compared to what we have to say." Inko told Izuku, "I'm pregnant, Izuku, you're going to be a big brother," as he put a big arm around her. As Izuku processed this new information, it seemed as though his brain had stopped working. In an instant, a million images flashed through his mind, picturing what his younger sibling would look like, what it would be like to play with them, to assist his parents with his younger sibling, and perhaps even how they would perceive him once he became a hero. Hisashi patted his head and said, Of course you will, son. He grinned, hugged his mother, and declared, I promise, I'll be the best big brother I can be. When Inko saw the spread, she remarked, there's no way we can eat all this, we'll be having leftovers for days. Hisashi was so thrilled that he prepared a little bit of everything for the Midoriya family's celebration of their new addition, including Mexican chicken tacos, American pancakes, Irish potato soup, Italian meatballs, and a plain giant chocolate cake that was more suited for a wedding than a baby announcement. Yes, I acknowledge that I went overboard, Hisashi said, rubbing the back of his head. Well, if the neighbors ever want anything, they can. They ate a lot, but when they finished, there were still a lot of leftovers. Hisashi went to their room and took out his hero costume, putting it on and feeling relieved that it still fit him well. He took out a spare helmet and wiped it off before putting it on. Hisashi grinned at his son and said, you should keep that one, son, as he left his and Inko's room and saw Izuku standing in the living room with the worn-out, old helmet he had worn on his Arctic mission. In addition to the fact that you've had it longer than I did, it will most likely bring you luck. Izuku grinned as he looked up at his father. No, he looked up at the hero Phoenix, the symbol of unity, his eyes full of stars. Hisashi said goodbye to Inko and departed the house, soaring through the air with his jetpack and wings. I know it was lucky for me, that monster would have ripped my head off if I wasn't wearing it. Izuku and Inko later that evening watched Hisashi's interview on television as the resurrected Phoenix. The interviewer, a brunette woman named Takeda Yoko, exclaimed with excitement, all right. Let's welcome the resurrected Phoenix. Hisashi waved at the crowd, his smile flawless despite only the lower half of his helmet showing, and the audience cheered as he hovered over their heads before landing next to Takeda. When the crowd subsided, Hisashi said, thank you, Takeda-san. It's good to be getting back to work again. We all want to know what happened, so please tell us, Phoenix. You haven't been here for 6 years, and everyone said you were dead for real this time. Takeda Yoko began right away. Well, as I've stated in earlier interviews about my life, my father was a villain who experimented on me, Hisashi said after taking a seat. It seems that his experiments strengthened my quirk and made me tougher. I'm strong enough to last for years, even in the frigid Arctic. That was when my body was hibernating. I didn't know it was possible. I passed out after killing the gorilla monster that had attacked the Arctic research facility, certain that I was going to die. After telling my wife what had happened over the phone, I left. So, you spent years essentially in a coma? That's incredible, Takeda said. Yeah, it was, Hisashi said, nodding. However, waking up and realizing how much time I had lost wasn't particularly remarkable. Fortunately, inventor David Shield and Swedish hero Frigga located me and assisted in my recovery. Cutting through all the red tape to return to work, I've been home for a few weeks. Has anything else been going on in your life, Phoenix? Has your wife moved on? What about the son you used to talk about all the time? When will you have another chance to see the outside world? Then Takeda questioned him. I've been at home and getting back in touch with my family. I will no longer miss my boy, who I missed more than half of his life. My wife is a true angel, she remained faithful the whole time. In addition, I've begun teaching my son how to be a hero. He has really thrown himself into it. I almost have to restrain him from exerting himself too much. I'll teach him everything I know about being a hero, provided he maintains good grades. I regret to inform my friends and fans worldwide that this Phoenix will remain in his nest. I intend to remain in Japan until something catastrophic occurs so that I can return home to my wife and child. I also have another big announcement of my own, Hisashi said, managing to smile even wider. My wife is pregnant with our second child, which I only learned about this afternoon. A new baby Phoenix will be born in Japan around this time next year. At this news, the audience erupted in applause, with some shouting, "Congratulations, Phoenix." Takeda said, "Wow, that's something," as she combed her hair. "You believe you'll be prepared to care for a new baby?" "I can handle anything after the Arctic," Hisashi said, nodding. "And you still won't reveal the names of your wife and child?" Takeda pushed. "You enjoy discussing your family, but you never give them names. Some even believe they are made up." "People can think whatever they want," Hisashi shrugged. "However, my wife cherishes her privacy, and forced me to make a commitment to keep my personal and professional lives apart. This will allow me to go on a date with her without being surrounded by admirers. Our children should also have a typical childhood, one that is superior to mine. I won't reveal their names because of this. Even so, I'm fairly certain that many people will eventually recognize my son's name." "Thank you for your time, Phoenix," Yoko Takeda said. "It's always a pleasure to have you here." Hisashi shook the woman's hand and said, It's a pleasure to be back home, Takeda-san, before taking off on his jetpack. Izuku continued to be trained by Hisashi at the same rate as before, but he also began teaching him other things at home. Hisashi was uncertain about his exact time of arrival home because hero work was never entirely predictable. He began teaching Izuku some skills to assist Inko, such as cooking and cleaning, because he wanted his son ready for the times when he would arrive home late. After putting in a lot of effort, Izuku was soon producing tasty meals for the family to eat, though not as good as his parents. His initial attempts were about as good as you could expect an 11-year-old to make. Hisashi practically lavished his pregnant wife with attention when he was at home, making sure she took her vitamins, giving her foot and shoulder massages when she requested them, or pushing him out of the kitchen so she could cook if he thought she might enjoy them, and being meticulous about attending doctor's appointments. That is not to say that he returned to his heroic role with any less fervor. Phoenix was frequently seen flying overhead while he was on duty, improving the world in both significant and minor ways. Nothing was too big or small for Phoenix to handle, from rescuing kids and pets from trees to putting an end to armed robberies. Hisashi's popularity had returned to the top 100 heroes after a month of his return to work, and he decided it was time to get a sidekick. Hisashi took the time to pick his sidekick carefully. He needed to pick a young person he could mentor, so the ideal candidate would have a strength or fire-based quirk like his. He hoped his sidekick would be prepared to be a hero in their own right in no more than 3 or 4 years. 3 people he believed could be his sidekick were identified after 2 weeks of selection. Gordon Yamato, a young man with gray eyes and blazingly tall orange hair, was the first candidate. He was small and slender. He had the ability to shoot solid plasma beams or balls from his mouth, and his quirk was called Plasma Breath. His hero name was Flare. To appear more refined, he frequently carried a rose and wore a gaudy red suit. Tsubaki Tamaki, the second candidate, was a taller than average, curvaceous woman with long black hair and all black eyes who was in her mid-20s. Her quirk, Black Smoke, allowed her to transform smoke into barriers or solid weapons by inhaling it. Her hero name was Smoker. To help activate her quirk, she smoked a cigar while wearing tight black pants, white boots, and a long-sleeved black shirt that exposed her midriff. Kotatsu Maki, a recent graduate of Ketsubutsu Academy, was the last applicant. She had pink eyes and black hair, and although she was about average in size, she had a very athletic build. She had the ability to summon fiery cat ears, claws, and 2 tails to fight with, and she could even control the temperature of her fire from 30 to 1000 degrees Celsius. Her hero name was Hellcat, and her quirk was Nekomata. She wore white pants and boots, a white sports bra-like top that flaunted her muscular body, and a white cat mask that covered the top half of her face. He needed to choose one of them to be his sidekick, and this was to be the last interview. He only intended to pose one query to them and observe their response. The most crucial question for determining whether a person had what it took to be a hero was this one. The first person Hisashi invited to his office was Gordon Yamato. A bookshelf brimming with hero law and history books, a desk adorned with family photos, chairs for guests to sit on, and an electric coffee maker and tea kettle based on the preferences of his guests were all features of a typical office. Hisashi questioned the first applicant, "So, tell me, Gordon Yamato, and answer honestly, why do you want to be a hero?" With a smile, Gordon Yamato said, "The same reason anyone wants to be a hero. For the money and the babes, of course. Let's face it, chicks dig the hero look, and if you got the cash, you'll get the ass." Hisashi didn't like the smile. "All right, I see. Please ask the next candidate to come in," Hisashi said, maintaining a neutral expression. Yamato acknowledged his error, but at least he didn't try to justify it as he walked out, saying, "You're up, Tsubaki." Tsubaki Tamaki came in next, looking proud and holding an unlit cigar in her mouth. Hisashi questioned his second applicant, "So, tell me, Tsubaki Tamaki, and answer honestly, why do you want to be a hero?" Tsubaki Tamaki sighed and replied, "Well, I figured I got a pretty good quirk and could use it in a really flashy way to get super popular really fast. I can do all kinds of things with my quirk, and make great entrances too, so I figure I could shoot to the top fast if anyone gave me a chance." As he spoke, Hisashi maintained a neutral expression. "I see. Please ask the next candidate to come in." Tsubaki realized her error and aimed her cigar at Hisashi, saying, "You're making a big mistake not picking me, asshole. I could smoke your ass in a second." Hisashi remained silent, so Tsubaki swore, "Asshole," and then walked out of the room, shouting at Kotatsu Maki, "You're up, bitch." Kotatsu Maki, the last applicant, shook as she entered his office and took a seat. Hisashi questioned his last applicant, "So, tell me, Kotatsu Maki, and be honest, Why do you want to be a hero? After swallowing uneasily, Kotatsu inhaled deeply before turning to face Hisashi. When I was a little girl, Phoenix-sama, I was kidnapped by sex traffickers. Thankfully, I was rescued before anything bad happened to me, along with a dozen other kids. It was you, Phoenix-sama, and Mirko-sama who saved us. On that day, I swore I would grow up to be a hero, just like you and Mirko-sama. I want to be a hero to save those who need to be saved, just like I did. After giving a nod, Hisashi inquired, and if I say no, what will you do? Kotatsu took a moment to regroup and said, then I'll keep searching for someone who will have me as their sidekick. And I'll work as hard as I can to be a hero. I know that I barely graduated from Katetsu Academy, and they aren't regarded as the best hero school out there, but I'm still ready to work as hard as I need to so I can do my part to keep people safe. Then Hisashi got up and nodded, saying, follow me, Kotatsu. Tsubaki began to leave, but Hisashi interrupted, saying, hold on, Tsubaki Tamaki, you and Gordon Yamato should know why you failed. They went to the waiting area outside Hisashi's office, where he said, I have made my decision. I am accepting Hellcat as my new sidekick. To be a hero is to put our lives on the line to protect the people of the world. It is a dangerous job, we charge into dangerous situations to help others. People need to know that they are safe when we arrive. This is not a job for the faint or half-hearted, Phoenix said, stopping Tsubaki. There is an older hero from fiction created centuries ago in the pre-Quirk era called Superman. When asked who he fights for, he once replied, I fight for those who can't fight for themselves. That is the true essence of being a hero, not for fame, not for money, or for other privileges. We stand up for people who are unable to stand up for themselves. You won't be a hero for very long if you aren't willing to do that without considering the reward. The two unsuccessful hero candidates glared at Phoenix and Hellcat but remained silent as they departed. Outside Hisashi's hero agency, a sizable contingent of reporters awaited the announcement of Phoenix's sidekick, and Kotatsu Maki appeared anxious upon seeing them. Just breathe, Hellcat, Hisashi said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Slowly breathe in courage and exhale fear. Breathe in courage and exhale fear. Kotatsu Maki, also known as his new sidekick Hellcat, calmed down after taking 4 deep breaths as he advised. Good. Let's go welcome the public now. Although it's not my favorite aspect of being a hero, it does help your reputation and let people know who you are so they know they're safe when they see you. As they left to meet with the press, Hellcat nodded. Who's the new sidekick, Phoenix? Why did you choose her over others? Sidekick, what's your name? In response, Phoenix said, Hellcat is my new sidekick. She has demonstrated the bravery, diligence, and selflessness required of a hero. I have decided to teach her how to be a fantastic hero because of this. Hellcat, what made you decide to partner with Phoenix? When asked, Maki replied, Phoenix and Mirko saved me when I was a young girl years ago. I aspire to be the type of hero who can rescue young children in need. And I'll do everything in my power to ensure everyone's safety. All right now, if you would let us pass, it's time for us to go on patrol. The press broke up, and Phoenix and his new sidekick began to walk the streets. People stopped to stare at the hero and sidekick, and occasionally they stopped for those who wanted to take pictures with them. She said all of this with conviction, and Phoenix nodded in agreement. Hellcat remained composed in these circumstances, and Hisashi realized he had made the right decision when Hellcat spotted a lost child. They approached the young boy, who had red eyes and a large fang-filled mouth, and Hellcat asked, Are you okay? The boy with the fangs exclaimed, I can't find my dad, I got bored while we were at the store and left, and now I can't find my dad. With a, all right, we're heroes, and we'll help you find your daddy, Hellcat extended her hand to the boy. The young boy nodded, and Phoenix lifted him up onto his wide right shoulder, saying, I can carry you on my shoulders, and you can look for your daddy easier. What's your name, child? Phoenix inquired. I'm Taro, Yukishiro Taro, the boy with the fangs declared. Phoenix said, all right, Taro-chan, let's call for your daddy. Daddy, Phoenix and Hellcat shouted, Yukishiro-san, as Taro yelled. 5 minutes after the three of them had been calling for Taro's father through the streets, a bald man with fangs similar to Taro's rushed up and yelled, Taro. Daddy. Taro shouted. Taro ran to his father's arms after Phoenix let him down. I'm so grateful, heroes, I apologize for all the trouble, I was so terrified that I became preoccupied with a sale. As he bowed in gratitude to Phoenix and Hellcat, Yukishiro-san said. Hellcat assured him, that's okay, sir. That's just a part of being a hero. My son exhibited the same tendency to stray as other kids his age, Next time, just be more cautious, Phoenix advised. Phoenix and Hellcat waved goodbye as they resumed their patrol after Taro and his father made a final bow to the heroes. Not bad, Hellcat, you handled that situation well, Phoenix remarked. Hellcat shrugged and said, I have a lot of cousins, both of my younger siblings are brothers, and I'm the oldest of 3. You know who spent her entire life as a babysitter? Phoenix-sama, that's not exactly what I call harrowing. Not so, Phoenix stated. Batman was another fictional character from the pre-Quirk era. Anyone can be a hero, he once said. You never know, Hellcat, you might have inspired a future hero. Even a man doing something as basic and comforting as wrapping their coat around a young boy's shoulders to let them know the world hasn't ended. Hellcat remarked, you sure like to talk about old history stuff. It was my favorite subject in school, Hisashi chuckled. I was the lonely kid who spent all of his time in the library, too. My understanding of what makes a good hero has been greatly influenced by those ancient tales. Even though Hellcat saved a jaywalker from being run over by a bus and Hisashi assisted a few foreign tourists in finding their way, the patrol continued with little incident. I love days like this, Hisashi said as they stopped to get some drinks from a convenience store. The owner attempted to give them the drinks for free, but Hisashi insisted on paying. Why is that? As they sipped their drinks, Maki inquired. It means I won't be late for dinner with my family, Hisashi informed her. A job like this teaches you to value the small things in life. Do you have a special someone in your life, Hellcat? Not sure yet, Maki replied. I've gone on a few dates with a paramedic, as they continued to stroll. He's intelligent, not particularly attractive, and genuinely committed to his work. I have no idea how it will turn out. All right. Hisashi acknowledged that maintaining a relationship while working at this job requires constant effort, but he also said that traveling the world taught him that love is a verb. You demonstrate it in your daily actions. And you'll realize it's worthwhile if you can accomplish that. A masked criminal leaned out a window and threw fireballs at the police cars, forcing one to pull off the road and another to slow down. Hellcat, I'll take care of the tires, said Phoenix as they were about to head back to the agency and call it a day when they heard the loud sound of screeching tires and saw a big truck speeding down the street with police in hot pursuit. As Hellcat chased after them on foot, Phoenix hurriedly told his sidekick, you get ready to take them in, and launched himself into the air to chase the fugitive truck. The truck began spinning out of control, and Phoenix flew ahead when he saw it was going to hit a storefront. He braced himself and used his super strength to stop the truck dead. Phoenix flew close to the crooks, but on the opposite side of the one throwing fireballs, and launched his own fireballs at the truck's tires using his fire breath. Good job, Hellcat, Phoenix said as police pulled up and arrested the crooks, who had robbed a nearby bank and fled with about 60 million yen. Most of it was recovered, but about 10 million yen was lost in the pursuit. The bills flying in the wind. Hellcat arrived just in time as Hisashi tore off one of the truck's doors and caught the driver. Hellcat used her Nekomata quirk to form fiery cat ears on her head and 2 cattails from her back, and she grabbed the fireball-throwing crook with her tails. Phoenix remarked, I think we worked hard today. We have to go back to the agency and clock out. Do you want me to take us back by air? The jetpack will require me to carry you. Yeah, that'll be faster, Hellcat said. Her face flushed as he picked her up princess style, but she remained silent as he flew them back to his hero agency, where Hisashi's secretary, an elderly woman wearing thick glasses named Hiramasa Madoka, said, Sir, I'm afraid you forgot to do something important before you left. Hey Hiramasa-san, what did I forget? You forgot to seal her registration, he said, lifting up Kotatsu Maki's sidekick registration. After yelling, Merda, Hisashi returned to his office, retrieved his seal, and formally approved Maki's registration, saying, Thanks for catching that, Hiramasa-san. That's what you pay me for, sir, Hiramasa said as she completed the registration. Hisashi led Maki to the changing area, and after they had both showered and changed into civilian clothes, he shook his new sidekick's hand. Kotatsu-san, you performed well today. He assured her, you'll be a great hero if you keep up the good work. Maki replied, Thank you, Phoenix-sama, and they left for their homes. As time went on, Inko's belly grew as her pregnancy went on, and Hisashi and Izuku were there to help her however she needed to, but other than Inko's cravings. She had a strong desire for bananas and spicy curry near the end of her first trimester and frequently combined the two. Much to her husband's dismay, not much changed for the Midoriya family. Izuku's training continued, and he soon learned more about hero gear and asked if he could get basic science kits to better understand how certain tools worked. As Hisashi taught Izuku Jeet Kun Do and Pankration, They even started sparring together at the end of the day, but Hisashi knew it wasn't fair because he was a giant of a man fighting a still-growing young boy. Izuku needed to spar someone his own size. Izuku's body changes became more noticeable. He had become one of the best athletes in his school, and he was given more appropriate exercise clothes like sleeveless shirts and gym shorts. Ink-chan, what are your thoughts? Could you prepare dinner for someone else? As he weighed his options, Hisashi asked, massaging Inko's swollen feet while they sat on the couch. Well, if it's for someone who can help Izuku, I can manage, Inko replied. Just let me know if there's something Maki-san would like. How did you know that I was thinking about her? Hisashi inquired. I need a martial artist, Hisashi, Inko remarked, and I've seen some videos online with Izuku of you and her fighting criminals. It's kind of obvious. She would be a good fit to teach Izuku your martial arts since she is familiar with them. She learned Jiu-Jitsu instead of pankration, but she is still a competent fighter. First, I'll check to see if she wants to assist, Hisashi said. Before they went on patrol the following day, Hisashi went up to Kotatsu Maki and said, Maki-san, may I ask you a favor? Phoenix-sama, what is it? Maki questioned him. I've been teaching my son Jeet Kune Do and pankration to help him with his hero training. Hisashi clarified, at this time, I'm too big for him to fight, but he's advanced enough to spar. Would you mind coming to my house and sparring with him once or twice a week? After giving it some thought, Maki said, of course, Phoenix-sama. What is your son's quirk, then? Her mouth fell open when Hisashi explained, he's quirkless. I know, it's amazing, added Hisashi, some would say impossible. But he's brave, determined, and always willing to learn new things. I'm confident that he will eventually be able to overcome his disability, and he's even learning how to make his own hero gear. Maki-san, I would be eternally grateful if you could assist him in realizing his dream. That's a tall order, sir, Maki said while massaging her arm. I can help teach him how to fight, but let's face it, even the best fighter can get taken out if a villain has a powerful quirk. I know, Hisashi said with a nod of agreement. In order to ensure that Izuku has the mental capacity to match his physical prowess, I have been questioning him about hero work as I trained him. In addition, my wife can prepare nearly any meal you desire for supper. Simply identify the dish. After giving it some more thought, Maki nodded, all right. If it's not too much work, my grandmother can make the chicken yakitori I gave her the recipe for. The rest of the day for Phoenix and Hellcat was mediocre for a hero, if not particularly exciting. They stopped a drug deal, prevented 4 armed robberies, assisted an elderly man who had fallen and broken his hip, and Hellcat signed an autograph for a young girl. That was the first time she had ever been asked for an autograph, and she was beaming the entire time. After their day was over, Hisashi called Inko to inform her and texted her the recipe for chicken yakitori, just like Maki's grandmother had made. Izuku met them at the door and bowed politely to Maki, who returned the greeting, it's nice to meet you, Kotatsu-san. Hisashi was dressed in a suit, while Maki was dressed simply in jeans, blue sneakers, and a gray t-shirt, but she had her gym bag with her training gear inside. Mom will return in 10 minutes after she goes to get some dinner items. Meeting you, Izuku-chan, is pleasant. If you'd like, you can call me Maki. You really want my sparring assistance, then? Maki informed him. Yes, Dad told me how good you are and thinks I could do better with someone closer to my size, Maki-san, Izuku, who was thrilled, replied. All right, I'll change into my workout clothes, and you should do the same, Maki said to Izuku, noting that she was about 10 centimeters taller than Izuku and 13.5 kilograms heavier than him. Hisashi directed her to the restroom so she could change, and Izuku proceeded to his bedroom to do the same. Izuku, it's not polite to stare, Hisashi said, jolting him out of his reverie. Izuku, it's not polite to stare, he said, blushing, and Maki laughed. Come on, Izuku-chan. Let's spar. Izuku was captivated by Maki's appearance, as she wore a black sports bra and tight black workout pants that flaunted her muscular body. Maki and Izuku stretched for a few minutes after the three of them went to the home gym. Don't underestimate her, son, Hisashi cautioned Izuku. Just because she's a woman doesn't mean she's weak. Consider this to be training for the time when you will have to battle a female villain. In the world of heroes, a hero must be prepared to battle any man, woman, or even child who poses a threat to the peace. In our world, it's a sad but necessary fact. Izuku remarked, I understand, Dad. After finishing their stretching, Izuku and Maki took their positions. Maki's arms were higher on her body than Hisashi's usual were, and she wasn't crouching as low as Hisashi had to, but she had no openings. Maki surprised Izuku by launching a side kick, which he blocked and then moved in for his own, but she ducked. Maki then launched a barrage of punches that the boy hardly blocked, and Izuku thought he saw an opening and attempted to punch him, but Maki grabbed his wrist, twisted his arm, and put him in an armbar. Maki remarked, "You got the fundamentals down pretty good," after Izuku tapped out. "You're slow, though." Izuku said, "Sorry," and prepared to play another round. Izuku attacked this time, using a combination of jabs and crosses, and Maki easily sidestepped his blows, aiming for a kick to the stomach. Izuku jumped back in time, but Maki continued to attack and swept Izuku's feet out from under him. Izuku slapped the ground before his back hit it, just like his father had demonstrated, but he wasn't prepared for Maki to mount him and get ready to punch him in the face. Izuku closed his eyes, only to open them to discover that her fist had prevented a nose break. Maki tapped his nose and grinned, saying, "Boop. Tell me why that happened," Maki said to Izuku as they stood up. Izuku remarked, "You're really fast, much faster than Dad." "Why is that?" Maki questioned him. "Because you're lighter and smaller than he is," Izuku replied. "Good," Maki grinned. "You are familiar with the basics. Even though you're faster and smaller than me, you're still slower. Why is that?" Izuku remarked, "Because you have more experience." "That's not the only reason," Maki said after nodding. "Now concentrate. I'll give you a treat if you can avoid or block these 10 blows." Once again, Izuku took his stance, and Maki launched herself at him, blocking a series of jabs and crosses before he blocked a kick to his stomach with his knee before she pulled her leg back and gave him a hook kick to the head that knocked him down. "What went wrong?" Maki questioned Izuku. Izuku said, "I didn't expect that kick," after pausing for a moment to collect his thoughts. "You're very talented, Maki-san." "True, part of that is because I have years of experience, whereas you only have a few months," Maki said with a small smile as she nodded. "However, I have a secret that has nothing to do with my body but rather my mind, which explains why I'm so quick. If you can identify it by the end of our session, I'll reward you with a treat." It was obvious that this wasn't a fair fight, but Izuku knew that his father wanted him to learn from it and become a better fighter for it. Izuku nodded and prepared to spar some more. Maki dominated Izuku for the remainder of the hour, never asking any more questions, just defeating him in a variety of ways, from kicks to punches to grappling him out. By the time it was over, he had numerous new bruises on his body, but none on his face. After it was finished, Maki grinned and gave Izuku a pat on the head, saying, "Izuku-chan, you persevered like a true hero. You just need to perfect the fundamentals, which will happen eventually. So, have you figured out my speed?" With a weary shake of his head, Izuku said, "No, I didn't, Maki-san." "It's your brain," Maki said, prodding Izuku's forehead. "You're a child who overthinks things. You can't think too much during a fight because it will slow you down. Yes, you will have time to plan before a fight, but you must stop thinking once the fists are flying. Attempt to kick me." Izuku attempted a kick, but Maki sidestepped it and remarked, "You don't have any emotional substance. All you're doing is striking with your body. Try once more." Maki smacked the top of Izuku's head in response to Izuku's attempt to punch him after he thought of emotions and became enraged. "I said emotional content," Maki said. Maki told him, "Try again, not angry, with sentimental content." Izuku thought, "Not anger, then what?" Then inhaled deeply and concentrated on the kick. He then threw a third kick, which Maki barely avoided, and she grinned. "How did that feel?" she asked Izuku. Izuku stopped and tapped his chin to think, and Maki smacked his head, yet again. "Don't think, Izuku-chan. Feel. That's your issue. You have to trust your gut when fighting. Make use of your feelings to direct your behavior. I'm so quick because of this. I acknowledge that it's challenging, but learning is the aim. Okay. Thank you, Maki-san," Izuku said with a nod. "I'll remember that going forward." "Just keep at it," Maki said, grinning and giving Izuku a head pat. "You'll be a good fighter in no time." After leaving the gym, Maki, Hisashi, and Izuku noticed that Inko was occupied with making chicken yakitori. "Hello, Maki-san. Hisashi filled me in on you. I'm glad to have met you in person," Inko said to their visitor. Maki bowed to her and said, "Please excuse me, and thank you for preparing dinner." "Just wait until you try it," she said. "Now, feel free to clean up in our bathroom. In half an hour, I should be finished cooking." Maki bowed to Inko and said, "Thank you very much," before making his way to the bathroom of the Midoriya parents. As Izuku watched her leave, he felt a stirring in his heart that he had never experienced before. "She's a little too old for you, son," Hisashi grinned. Izuku went to his own bathroom to get ready for dinner, blushing and keeping quiet. The Midoriyas and their guests sat down to dinner after Hisashi, Maki, and Izuku had changed. They talked about their days and how Maki had trained Izuku, which was very comforting for Maki. By the time dinner was over, she felt as though she was with her family. Before she left, she told Izuku, "Izuku-chan, just keep on practicing, alright? Perhaps he has a chance after all." Izuku said, "I will, Maki-san," with the assurance of a child, and she grinned as she walked out of the Midoriya house. As the days went by, the Midoriya family became accustomed to their new schedule for Izuku's training and Maki's occasional visit. They were all fond of Maki. For Hisashi and Inko, she began to feel like the eldest of their children, and for Maki, it was like having another set of parents and another younger brother to look after. As Izuku's strength increased, he began lifting weights with 8 kilograms dumbbells, kettlebells, and even light barbells. Inko's pregnancy proceeded without any problems. She took care to abstain from certain foods and stayed away from smokers to prevent secondhand smoke from harming her unborn child. Aside from the usual pregnancy symptoms, the worst thing she experienced was heartburn, which is a sign that the baby will have a full head of hair. She found out she was expecting a girl when she went to the hospital for a routine checkup 5 months into her pregnancy. They were all thrilled, and Hisashi revealed to the world that he was expecting a daughter while posing as Phoenix. Fans and other heroes showered him with congratulations, and soon his agency was overflowing with dolls, candy, baby books, baby name books, baby girl toys, and other small presents. He and Inko divided the candy between Inko and Izuku, kept the better toys, donated the books, and donated the clothes and toys they didn't keep to children's charities because Inko wanted to make her baby's clothes herself. When Inko found out that Izuku was a girl, she decided right away what she would name her child, and they still had the baby books from when Izuku was a baby. When she finished sewing her onesie, which was entirely white with the name, Hisako, sewn in blue lettering, she demonstrated her choice. The name of his baby sister would mean, long-time child. Izuku nodded as she told her husband and son, "When we named Izuku we took the first part of my name. I wanted to do the same, take Hisa, from Hisashi, and Ko, because we're having a girl." It made sense. His parents had told him that they intended to have another child when he was young but that they had to wait a long time because his father had vanished. Their long-awaited child was Hisako. Izuku expanded his collection of articles he read online about how to be a good older brother to his younger sister. Reading comments from people about being older siblings made him anxious because he could see how things would change. He wanted to have a private conversation with Maki before she left after their training. When they were outside his house, she said, "What's wrong, Izuku-chan?" "I'm really nervous about having a baby sister. It just looks like it'll be a lot of hard work," he told her. "How did you deal with being an older sibling?" "Well, I was younger than you when my first little brother was born," Maki explained to him. "I was around 7 years old. I didn't have to do much work, but I did have to get used to things like baby crying and the smell of dirty diapers, but I think that's the worst part. However, when my youngest brother was born, I was 12, so my parents needed me to help more. I frequently babysat them, helping to take care of my baby brother by making food, changing diapers a few times, playing with my middle brother while mom and dad looked after the baby, and other such tasks. Raising a child is difficult, but Izuku-chan, you can manage it. You have a good heart and are a tough kid. Even though Hisako-chan hasn't even been born yet, I can tell you already adore her. Just be prepared to assist your parents when they need it. I know your mother is a strong woman, but even she needs occasional respites. Remember that, and you'll be all right, Izuku-chan." She grinned and gave him a head pat before returning to her apartment, where Izuku felt more confident. They celebrated Izuku's 12th birthday while they waited for Hisako to be born. Izuku asked to see his dad's hero agency, and he gave him a tour and explained all the less glamorous aspects of being a hero, such as paperwork, but he would not allow Izuku to accompany him on patrol because it was too risky for a 12-year-old. As Inko approached the last weeks of her pregnancy, she and Hisashi decided that she should remain in the Shock T Maternal Care Center. Izuku and Hisashi changed their schedules to see her daily, but it was a new experience for Izuku to return home without his mother. When the due date finally came, 2 months and a week after Izuku's 12th birthday, both Hisashi and Izuku took the day off work and school, respectively, to be there, and Hisashi had secured paternity leave for 8 weeks after the birth. When Inko began to have contractions at 11 in the morning, she was taken to the maternity ward to give birth, and Izuku had to wait in the waiting room while Hisashi accompanied her, wearing the appropriate mask, gloves, hat, and gown, just like the doctors attending her, which reassured her when her husband was there. As she prepared, the doctor reassured her, "Just breathe, Midoriya-san. This will take some time." The doctor said, "This is the last contraction, your baby's head's starting to come out," and it took 6 hours between the beginning of the contractions and the actual beginning of the birth, during which Hisashi supported her and gave her what strength he could. Hisashi said to her, "Just a little more, Ink-chan, one last push," and Inko squeezed his enormous hand in hers while she let out a final groan and gave it her best effort. "She's here," the doctor said. "Your daughter is here," and gave Hisashi the scissors to cut the umbilical cord. Hisako had white hair with green highlights, a combination of her parents' hair colors, and was born screaming loudly. Hisashi had to wipe away happy tears while cutting the cord. Hisashi said, "She's here, Ink-chan, our baby's here," as the doctors cleaned her up and gave him their daughter. Inko held her chest and didn't look at him. Instead, her face was twisted in agony. "Doctor, there's a problem." After Hisashi shouted, the doctor went to examine Inko. "A myocardial infarction has struck her. A heart attack. Now we have to get to work." Hisashi was hurried out of the room while clutching his still crying infant daughter as the doctor called for additional staff to assist her. The doctor said, "Phoenix, because this was a hospital run by the Hero Association and most of the patients were heroes or their families, so there was no need to hide his identity like in a civilian-run hospital." Hisashi looked at the doctor, an older man with 4 arms, and said, "You should look to your son now." He was completely shocked as he handed baby Hisako to a doctor and was helped out of the medical clothes. "For your wife and daughter, we're doing everything we can." "A heart attack, I should have said something. I knew it was risky because of her weight, I should have said something." Hisashi nodded, too shocked to speak as he walked with legs that felt like they weighed 1,000 tons. He arrived at the weighing room slowly and robotically, where Izuku was sitting, fidgeting from boredom, but displaying nervousness upon seeing his father. "Dad? Is Mom doing okay?" "Hisako, where are you?" he asked. Hisashi swallowed and sat down beside Izuku, who was alarmed by his father's behavior. After swallowing once more, Hisashi said, "Your sister is fine. However, your mother suffered a heart attack while giving birth. Now, where is she? Will she be all right?" "Afraid?" Izuku asked him. "The doctors are trying their hardest to help her. In due time, they will inform us of her condition," Hisashi managed to say. "Is Mom going to die?" Izuku asked, his eyes welling with tears. Hisashi put a comforting arm around his son and said, "She's strong, Izuku," suppressing a scream at the idea of Inko dying while giving birth to their daughter. "She is stronger than she appears. She'll persevere if it's for you and Hisako. No matter what." He was unable to conceal his anxiety, but he was able to sound more assured than he actually was. After hours of waiting, Izuku and Hisashi only left the waiting room to eat a bland dinner from the hospital cafeteria, eating slowly and robotically, too preoccupied with Inko to really taste it or discuss anything else. Izuku dozed off and was awakened by the arrival of the 4-armed doctor, who said, "Phoenix, your wife's condition has stabilized. The visiting hours are over, and she is currently asleep. She is available for you to see tomorrow morning." "Thank you, doctor," Hisashi said, "we'll come in the morning." Hisashi exhaled a sigh of relief that contained smoke because he was so anxious that his fire breath had begun to build up unconsciously, something that only occurred when he experienced intense emotions. "Before we leave, can we at least see my daughter?" Little Hisako was sleeping with a dozen other babies in the maternity ward viewing area. Hisashi pointed her out, and Izuku saw his baby sister for the first time through a glass window after the 4-armed doctor nodded. He and Izuku hurried through their morning exercises the following day, and after explaining the situation to Izuku's middle school, who were sympathetic and let Izuku take the remainder of the week off in light of what had happened to Inko, they went directly to the hospital and were shown to Inko's room, where she was already awake and nursing baby Hisako. As they walked in, she smiled at them despite her tired appearance and the dark bags under her eyes. "Mom!" Izuku hugged her, barely stopping his run, and Inko returned the hug with the arm that wasn't holding Hisako to her breast, while Hisashi encircled his entire family in his enormous arms. Izuku handed his phone to Inko so she could take a photo of her husband and daughter, and Hisashi said, "Do you want to hold your sister, Izuku?" That's what he did with Izuku when he was born, too. After Hisako finished nursing, Hisashi removed his shirt and took Hisako from Inko and held her to his chest. "Should I remove my shirt?" His parents laughed when he asked, and Inko replied, "No, son, you don't have to do that. Just remember to support her head and be gentle. She hasn't even been born yet." Hisashi helped Izuku hold his baby sister while Izuku took the other seat in the room. Izuku looked at his baby sister, whose skin was ruddy but who was breathing normally while she slept, and he smiled broadly as his parents took a picture of him holding her. The woman who assisted with the birth entered, a severe-looking woman with salt and pepper hair and eyes that appeared to have cross-shaped pupils. I see you're awake, the doctor said. This was a serious situation, Midoriya-san, the doctor said, glancing at Hisashi and Inko. I know, Inko said, nodding. Because I didn't take better care of myself, I had a heart attack. After I had my daughter, I hoped to begin. Good, said the doctor, nodding. Just remember that even if you lose the weight, you will not have the same body you had in high school if you were a woman in her late 30s to early 40s. In order to aid in your heart's recovery from the heart attack, we will also prescribe certain medications. If you want to keep nursing your daughter, they won't have an impact, so you don't need to worry. Additionally, I can offer you some options for dieting. Inko said, thank you, doctor, and the doctor went over her options with her in greater detail. The entire Midoriya family was relieved when they got home after Inko's 2-week hospital stay, and Nezu threw them a coming-home party with the help of Maki and the Bakugo family. Izuku fell asleep with relief when they got home with his mother and baby sister, and everything seemed to be fine. After his baby sister was born, Izuku's life changed because his parents had to devote a lot of their energy to caring for her. He worked hard to help keep the house clean with his parents and didn't complain if he smelled a messy diaper. His dad showed him how to change the diaper when he asked. After a few attempts with his parents, they realized that Izuku could do that on his own, when needed. During the first year after Hisako was born, Maki would occasionally come to babysit when his parents went out for their anniversary or to go on a date once or twice a month. When Izuku turned 13, he demanded that he be allowed to watch Hisako alone. Hisashi and Inko agreed, providing him with clear instructions to call them or Maki if he needed assistance and ensuring that there was enough formula for Hisako, meaning that all Izuku had to do was heat it up. It was a difficult situation for the young teen, but he handled it well, with little complaining from his baby sister, and with some extra guidance and assistance from Maki. He quickly became Hisako's only babysitter, enabling his parents to go out every other weekend, excluding their anniversary. Hisashi and Izuku were there to support Inko in her decision to work hard and become healthier after she nearly died of a heart attack while giving birth to her daughter. Inko explained that she used the workout videos, which featured none other than the rabbit hero, Mirko, for her own workouts and demonstrated that there were varying levels of difficulty so even someone who wasn't trying to be a hero could be more active. With their assistance and encouragement, Inko started living a healthier lifestyle. The most difficult thing for her was cutting back on sugar and unhealthy carbohydrates, but Hisashi had many recipes for healthy and filling vegetarian meals, and soon Inko was using the home gym nearly as frequently as her husband and son, making sure Hisako was close by to watch her. The baby watched her and occasionally tried her best to mimic her as she performed push-ups and sit-ups, which made Inko happy. Izuku's own training, however, proceeded at a good clip, and after 3 years of training with his father, the results were evident to all. At 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighing an incredible 180 pounds, Izuku was one of the biggest boys in his class. School coaches practically pleaded with him to join his school's teams, martial arts clubs tried to recruit him, and few people attempted to bully him anymore despite his quirklessness. However, Izuku only joined the school's mechanical engineering club in the hopes of learning more to construct hero gear. He could bench press 125 kilograms barbells with his father watching him, lift 25 kilograms dumbbells and kettlebells, and even start wearing a weighted vest with ankle and wrist weights on his morning jogs. Despite his incredible feats of strength, Kachan still looked down on him because he was quirkless, calling him useless and crazy and literally blowing up on him. This continued until one fateful day when their teacher asked what they wanted to do for a living. After school ended, Kachan approached Izuku and said, "Listen up, Deku," after Izuku had once again told the class that he wanted to be the first quirkless hero in history. Without a quirk, you're not cut out to be a hero, regardless of how big you've grown. Izuku looked at his old childhood friend and saw that he was actually bigger than him now. He had once feared Kachan because of his power, but now he realized that he had power of his own. His body's natural prowess had grown as he had, and he no longer feared Kachan. Before pushing past him with his hangers-on, he grabbed the hand Kachan had placed on his shoulder and threw it off. "Don't turn your back on me, you useless turd." Izuku was ready to go home because it was Friday, his rest day, and he hoped to catch an interview with All Might that night. Kachan shouted after him, the nitroglycerin like sweat on his palms going off like firecrackers. Izuku was blocked by the goons as Kachan and his thugs caught up to him outside the school building. "You think you can be a quirkless hero, you piece of shit? Then demonstrate it, beat me," Kachan said, "and I'll admit that even a worthless weirdo like you can be a hero." Izuku glared at Kachan, and a fire ignited in his eyes. After years of this abuse, Izuku was ready to let loose everything that was inside of him. He put his backpack down, took off his school jacket, and rolled up his sleeves. One of Kachan's posse said, "Dude, his muscles got muscles," as he stretched for a minute before assuming his stance, which was a Jeet Kune Do stance, with his dominant arm pointing forward to strike with his right side. "Let's go," Izuku said, turning to his childhood friend. "Perish!" Kachan screamed at the top of his lungs as he charged at Izuku. Izuku kept his calm, and when Kachan was in range, Izuku let loose with a quick jab cross combo that stunned him, then finished with a hard side kick to his stomach, knocking Kachan back almost to the same spot he charged from. Bakugo. After saying that, one of the thugs attempted to approach Izuku but was stopped when Izuku returned to his fighting stance. "Retrench." As he stood up, Kachan declared, "I can defeat this punk without anyone's assistance." Izuku tried the same counterattack when Kachan ran at him again, but Kachan ducked it and kicked him hard in the solar plexus. Unprepared, Izuku's lungs were blown out, and Kachan finished by setting off a small explosion directly in Izuku's face, knocking him down. Izuku rolled up from the ground and reassumed a fighting stance just as Kachan was about to finish him. With no time to block, Izuku did the only thing he could and threw a powerful hook punch directly into Kachan's face, and Kachan slammed an even harder explosion into his face at the same time. Both boys were knocked down hard to the ground, but they were determined to continue fighting, and they got up about the same time, ready to pummel each other, when one of Kachan's goons ran between them and exclaimed, "Oh shit! A teacher's coming, we need to get out of here." He may not have won that fight, but he had not lost either. It was definitely a draw. He, a quirkless boy, had faced someone with a powerful explosion quirk and fought him evenly. He was certain he could handle anything now, quirk or no quirk. Izuku forgot the fight and rushed to get his jacket and book bag, making sure nothing was missing as he quickly put them back on and started running for home. Izuku remembered All Might, his favorite hero, and how he always faced the challenges head-on, always smiling. Izuku grinned broadly and mimicked All Might's heroic laugh as he went through a tunnel, saying, "Ah ha ha ha." From behind Izuku, a slimy voice said, "You have a nice-looking body. Would you mind if I took it?" "Hey now, don't struggle too hard," Izuku said, spinning around before a slime monster of some sort engulfed his body. Izuku struggled, but the slime monster was sticky and had no joints he could lock or spots he could hit. "It will feel much better soon if you just stop struggling." The slime monster pushed his slime into Izuku's throat and said, "Much better." It smelled like sewage, and Izuku felt like he was going to throw up. Izuku was crying as he looked down on his dreams and realized he might never reach them. His book bag unzipped, notebooks containing his notes on heroes fell, and he saw a drawing of his possible hero costume. Everything went dark until he heard a strong voice say, "It's okay now, because I am here." Texas Smash. The slime monster was no longer hiding him when Izuku opened his eyes. "Huh, what happened?" He looked around and yelled. "Sorry about that," a strong voice said, and Izuku looked up to see his idol and hero, the #1 hero, the symbol of peace, and All Might in person. Normally I'm a little more considerate of not getting civilians involved, but I didn't realize how complicated this city's sewer system was. Ah ha ha ha. Thunderstruck, Izuku could only mumble incoherently, "All Might, I can't believe it. Hold on. What happened to my notebook?" He looked down and saw his notebook. With All Might's autograph no less. "Oh my god. I sincerely appreciate it. This family will have a treasured heirloom. I feel so honored." Izuku let out a cry of gratitude. All Might remarked, "Hey, always got to treat the fans," before taking a closer look and stating, "Hey, you look familiar. Is your name Midoriya by any chance?" "Yes. How did you find out, Midoriya Izuku?" Izuku questioned him. "My, how quickly time passes. I was present at your parents' wedding." All Might patted his pants pocket and Izuku noticed a large liter bottle containing the slime monster. "You look a lot like your mother," All Might said, before turning around and squatting. "I'd love to stay and chat, but I need to leave. This guy needs to get locked up in prison. I fear that when it comes to fighting evil, there is no rest. Now, back off, because takeoffs can be quite risky." Only after All Might had taken off did he notice that Izuku was holding on to him, saying, "Hey, hey, hey. That's risky. You must leave this place. You must relax." "But I'll die if I let go," Izuku shouted. "You're correct." All Might coughed a little and said, "Knock on the door and eventually someone will let you in." He then swiftly punched the air to alter his trajectory, and they landed atop an office building. "I apologize, Midoriya Shonen, but I have to leave." "Please wait, I must know," Izuku said, remembering the doctor telling him that he couldn't be a hero without a quirk and his mother giving him a tearful hug when she asked, Even without a quirk, can I still be an amazing hero like you? Izuku grabbed All Might's stomach as he stopped and turned to face him. Izuku. With his jetpack, Izuku's father descended and asked, "What's going on? I saw All Might and you clinging to him just as I was about to finish my patrol." "Dad, Izuku was startled, but then both father and son saw All Might gasping in agony as white smoke began to come out of his body. "Stay back, son," Hisashi said, and as the smoke cleared, a tall, almost skeletal man dressed in the same green cargo pants and white shirt as All Might appeared in front of them. "Who are you? Is this a villain's ploy?" Hisashi inquired in his deeper phoenix voice, prepared to engage in combat. After saying, "I am All Might, Hisashi," the skeletal man spat out blood. When the skeletal man threw up blood, Izuku screamed and Hisashi nearly did too. "What? How? What happened?" All Might caught his breath and responded, "Well, the reason I can get all muscled up is because it's kind of like guys at the pool or beach that suck in their stomach and flex their muscles to look more muscular than they actually are," Izuku screamed as he pointed at All Might. For his part, All Might lifted his shirt to reveal a horrifying wound on his left side, which was still bruised but also appeared to be healing. It appeared as though a terrible attack had twisted his entire torso. "Since you know my secret, I might as well tell you about this," All Might advised them. "This happened 5 years ago, it was a villain attack." 5 years ago, Izuku whispered, "Was it a toxic chainsaw?" With a shake of his head, All Might said, "No, he was tough, but not enough to do this to me." Izuku saw black smoke rising from his father's clenched teeth and a cloud of it emanating from his mouth as he said, "Was it him?" Hisashi clenched his fist, and Izuku smelled smoke. All Might gave Hisashi a low nod, and Izuku questioned, "Who is him?" Izuku wisely shut up when Hisashi said, "Someone you're better off never knowing about," smoke still trailing from his mouth. Izuku had only seen this a few times, usually after his father had rescued a child from a terrible villain or a domestic abuse incident, and only when he was furious. "Yeah," All Might went on to say, "I lost a few organs, including my kidney, intestines, 3/4 of my liver, one of my lungs, and my stomach. But in the end, I got him. The world will no longer be bothered by him." All Might said to them, "Look, I know I'm asking a lot, but you need to keep this quiet." Hisashi inhaled deeply and exhaled a long column of smoke before it stopped coming from his mouth. "The symbol of peace is what the world needs. I can still fight for justice even if I am only able to use my full power for a few hours each day. Therefore, don't discuss this with anyone. In particular, you. Midoriya Shonen. Please refrain from discussing this with your friends or on social media." Izuku nodded and said, "All Might, I get it. Unless you tell me otherwise, I won't tell anyone." "All Might, how much longer can you continue like this?" Hisashi questioned. "You're older than me, you're no longer a young man, and you're only getting weaker after that kind of injury." "A few more years," replied All Might, rising to his feet. "While I can, I will do everything I can." Izuku said, "Wait, please, All Might," as All Might turned to go. "I must hear it from you. I must know. Can I still be a hero if I don't have a quirk?" Both Izuku and Hisashi gazed at All Might with apprehension, and All Might sighed, "I apologize, son. However, being a hero is impossible without a quirk. If you still want to help," All Might told Izuku, "then when you grow up, you can join the police force or the fire department." Izuku felt as if his entire world had fallen apart in an instant, as if all of his dreams, hopes, and labor over the previous 3 years had vanished. Even though they don't receive much recognition, they nevertheless produce valuable and significant work. And either of them would be proud of a strong young man like you. Izuku and Hisashi were too shocked to respond as All Might turned to leave and opened the door to exit the office building. Hisashi felt as though he had just witnessed his son being rejected by a god. He had practically worshipped All Might ever since the hero had rescued him from the streets all those years ago, modeling his ideals of being a hero after him and trying to live up to his example both on and off the clock. When faced with a difficult decision, Christians asked, "What would Jesus do?" Hisashi asked, "What would All Might do?" When Izuku was younger, he frequently acted as a villain while Izuku acted as All Might, who had come to save Inko. Inko had told Hisashi that Izuku had seen All Might as a stand-in father while he was away, and that seeing his son rejected broke his heart. He had fostered Izuku's own love of the world's #1 hero. After removing his helmet, Hisashi knelt before Izuku, placed his hands on his shoulders, and uttered the words, "Izuku. I am aware that right now is most likely the worst day of your life. However, you cannot allow this to ruin the remainder of your life. You are stronger now than you were before you put in so much work. You will need to put in more effort than anyone else, but I am confident that you are capable of becoming the first quirkless hero. Are you still interested in becoming a hero? After swallowing and looking into his father's eyes, Izuku nodded and said, I want to be a hero. Before putting his helmet back on, Hisashi grinned and nodded. Call your mom and let her know that we'll be late coming home today. After Izuku informed his mother that he and his father would be late returning home, Hisashi picked him up and carried him to his agency, where he signed some final documents before clocking out. Hisashi changed into a plain gray suit with a red tie and went outside to find Izuku staring up at the sky. Let's go home, son, Hisashi said, and they left for home. They heard an explosion and rushed in the direction of their house, which was just a few blocks away. What's happening? Some sort of supervillain attack is going on. Is that a slime monster? I wonder. Where is he? I thought All Might was pursuing him. When slime monster was heard, Izuku sprinted over. Izuku, hold on, Hisashi yelled, but the crowd soon made it hard to find him. Izuku. The slime monster that All Might had rescued him from slammed a tentacle on the ground and laughed. Ha ha ha. Between the police trying to keep civilians away and heroes trying to rescue those trapped, Izuku ran until he was in front of the police. I'm sure I could defeat All Might with this kid's strength. Kacchan was visible to Izuku through the slimy folds of the monster's body. After struggling against the slime monster, Bakugo Katsuki opened his mouth and said, You bastard, let me go. Izuku's body simply moved without even considering his next move. Izuku, don't! Hisashi screamed as he tried to go after him. Let me go. My son is that, Izuku. Izuku ran to Kacchan and began tearing away at the slime monster, ignoring his father's cries as he ran towards it and threw his backpack at its eye, causing it to scream and turn away. What are you doing, Deku? You crazy jerk, Kacchan shouted. With a smile on his face, Izuku said, I'm here to save you, Kacchan. You again? As his body began to envelop Izuku once more, the slime monster roared, I'll just use you both as hostages then. Izuku fought with all his strength as before, but the slime monster still managed to capture him. He turned to see his father being restrained by 20 officers while he yelled his name, but he was pulled back by a powerful hand that grabbed his collar, and an unstoppable fist slammed forward, smash. Izuku looked and saw that it was All Might, once again in his muscular form, saving him for the second time that day. And the slime monster was blown away like leaves in a gale storm. The very clouds parted by the power of the punch as rain was unleashed, putting out the fire around them. After the fire was extinguished, Hisashi pushed his way through the police, running directly for Izuku. What did you consider? Hisashi yelled as he looked at Izuku with an expression he had never seen. Tears were streaming down his dad's face. I thought you were dead. I believed there was nothing I could do to prevent you from being killed, and I was going to witness it. I'm sorry, Dad, Izuku responded. When I saw Kacchan, my body just moved. Hisashi apologized for the trouble, and after a while, he and Izuku went home. I'm sorry, Izuku, Hisashi said as they walked, but that situation was too dangerous for you. Other heroes approached, and some of them congratulated Kacchan for fighting against the slime monster. Meanwhile, police gathered the slime monster into various trash bags, and reporters swarmed all over All Might. If there had been no quirk or equipment, 1,000 things could have gone wrong. We're fortunate that All Might came together just in time to save you. Hisashi said, there's a big difference between being suicidal and being brave, and pulled him into a side hug. Don't forget that. They continued on in silence, Hisashi holding Izuku close like he could float away if he let go, until they were on the corner from the street their house was on. Deku. Izuku and Hisashi turned to see Kacchan running toward them, but before he could stop and catch his breath, he screamed, You worthless loser, you didn't save me from shit. Remind yourself of it. After that, he began to run toward his own house. Hisashi sighed and remarked, that boy's pride will get him in deep trouble one day. I'm here. Then All Might appeared to Izuku and Hisashi. All Might? Izuku shouted in surprise, how did you escape from all those reporters so quickly? I fight for justice, not for soundbites, All Might chuckled, because I am. Dio cane fava. Izuku's mouth fell open when Hisashi swore at him in Italian. His father had just called the #1 hero a goddamn dick in front of him. With black smoke streaming from his mouth, the man glared at Hisashi as he marched forward, leaving All Might speechless. My son and I looked at you as everything we should aspire to, he said. You have some nerve, Stronzo, to tell him that he couldn't pursue his dream and then show up as if nothing had happened. I know that people who are quirkless are at a significant disadvantage. The three of them heard Inko scream as All Might literally deflated at that moment. Mom? Inko? Crap, said All Might, coughing up more blood. Indeed, it was Inko pushing 2-year-old Hisako in her stroller after returning from a brief trip to the grocery store for some dinner ingredients. What happened? What's going on here? I saw All Might, then Hisashi, and then the smoke. It's a long story, she said, and All Might swallowed. It has also been a long day. Would it be okay if we did this in a private setting, Midoriya-san? Izuku remarked, this is like some weird dream, All Might. I always hoped we could have you here, but well, I didn't picture you being all. I guess so, Inko said, and the Midoriyas led All Might to their house, where Inko put Hisako to sleep while Hisashi prepared tea for them and their visitor. Hisashi sat with his family, and All Might began by saying, you are right to be angry with me, decrepit, as he handed a cup of tea to Inko when she joined them and gave the tea to Izuku and All Might. I ought to have given your son's feelings more consideration. But it's very important that you and your son hear what I have to say. Will you listen to me at least? What took place? Inko asked, and Izuku told her all that had happened with the slime monster, meeting All Might, discovering him like this, his secret, all of it. Inko alternately gasped and cried and hugged her son close like he would die if she let him go. Oh, my poor baby, she said through her tears, you've been through so much today. Hisashi handed her a box of tissues to wipe away her tears, and then the three Midoriyas turned to face All Might. Mom, not in front of All Might, Izuku said, blushing with shame at being treated like a child in front of his idol. Therefore, this is a secret that needs to be kept at all costs. All Might started off by saying, you can only imagine what would happen if the truth got out, to which the Midoriya all nodded. I nearly gave up today when I saw that monster with that boy's power. I was exhausted and no longer able to fight. However, I witnessed you, Midoriya Shonen, a quirkless boy, risk his life to save his friend. That made me realize the true meaning of heroism. To be a hero means to find a way to see that justice is done, no matter what. My body can't keep up with my image anymore. A new hero, a new symbol must step up for the next generation. I want to give you, Midoriya Shonen, my quirk. And with its immense power, you will be the next symbol of peace, he said, and immediately vomited. When she saw him throw up blood all over her floor, Inko screamed and passed out. Izuku. Go to our room and get the smelling salts, Hisashi commanded after catching her. Going to his parents' room, Izuku picked up a jar of smelling salts from his mother's dresser. Meanwhile, the idea of receiving a quirk was making his head spin. How could that have happened? Facial features, eye color, and hair color were examples of genetic quirks. People still can't just swap those things at random. All Might, however, was telling him that he could grant him his own quirk. Inko was soon awake once more after he went back to the living room and gave his father the smelling salts. Sorry about that, it's just, this is all too much, Inko replied. When Hisashi said, Izuku, go get the trash can, before our living room looks like a murder scene, Izuku promptly placed the trash can close to All Might so he could throw up in it if needed. I'm sorry, All Might said, I can write down a recipe that will get that out. It's based on what's used around crime scenes. All right, let's get back to my quirk. I can give it to someone, yes. Someone I think is deserving. I have a quirk that involves gathering power. One that I received years ago from my mentor. Prior to us, other heroes possessed it, and the quirk's strength increased. One for all, my quirk, is a beacon of hope for the entire world. You will be endowed with great power when I give it to you. The ability to transform the world. However, this is something that I cannot force on you. This is your life, your choice. Will you accept the power of my quirk, one for all? As he processed all of this, Izuku swallowed because it went against everything he knew about quirks, and he knew a lot. He had spent the previous 3 years training to become a quirkless hero, talking to Melissa Shield for hours on end, studying everything he could about engineering and mechanics, working out 6 days a week, and working until he was exhausted. But knowing that All Might couldn't be a hero for very long, hearing about this quirk, this one for all. He asked his parents, Mom, Dad, what do you think I should do? Izuku, his mother began, this is incredible. All of it. I know that you've always wanted to be a hero. You and your father were preparing you to be a hero even without a quirk. But being a hero is so dangerous. I think if this is really what you want, then you should accept, so you can be safer. His dad continued, this isn't something I can decide for you, son. All I can say is, no matter what your choice is, I will stand by you, no matter what. Whether you'll be the next symbol of peace or the first quirkless hero is something only you can decide. Look deep within yourself and make that choice. Izuku glanced at his idol after seeing his life flash before his eyes. Izuku realized what he needed to do, going forward, when he saw All Might throwing up blood into their trash can. "I'll take it," he responded. "I'll take one for all." Izuku accepted one for all, and All Might nodded. Then he got to his feet, reverted to his muscular self, pulled out one of his hairs, and said, "Eat this." As they gazed at All Might, the Midoriyas exclaimed, "Huh." "Unfortunately, one for all must be transferred by DNA, All Might said, rubbing his head. "This is the least obscene method. To get it from my mentor, I had to follow suit. It will take at least 3 hours for it to be absorbed by your body after you swallow it, after which you will have my amazing power." Not exactly what I expected," Izuku said, nodding and approaching All Might, who swallowed his hair. After saying, "That's life," unfortunately, All Might went to the Midoriya's kitchen, got a notepad and pen, and wrote down an address along with a list of cleaning supplies. "I would like to meet at this address early tomorrow morning, ideally before the sun rises," he said. "Thank you for your hospitality, but I need to head off," All Might said, before handing the paper to Inko. "And below is that recipe that will clean up the blood," he added, before deflating once more before leaving. "I need to talk about a few hero things with All Might," Hisashi said, getting up and assisting him by grabbing his shoulder. "Just some serious technical details, nothing too big. You must begin working on your homework, Izuku. Additionally, I have to determine how long you will be grounded for attempting to battle a villain." Fortunately, Inko noticed that they already had all the required chemicals and began cleaning All Might's blood off her floor. "Oh man, I thought you forgot that," Izuku said, but he quickly grabbed his backpack and went to his room. As All Might left, Hisashi whispered, "Are you certain he's dead?" "Dead, really? I can't believe he has all of his abilities?" "Even he couldn't survive having the top of his head blown off," All Might said in a whisper, nodding. "Yes, All for One's father, Hisashi, is no longer with us. You are safe, as is your family." "Don't look so surprised," All Might said to Hisashi, who had never revealed his father's identity to anyone. "You're exactly like him. I recognized you as a boy who fled an evil household the day I saw you on the streets." "I'm proud of you, Hisashi," All Might said, placing his hand on his shoulder in a fatherly manner. "I admit, I wasn't sure of you at first, but in the years since then, you've proven to be the one apple that fell very far from its tree. As a man and as a hero, you have achieved a lot, and your son will look up to you as an example." "Inko deserves 80% of the credit for how Izuku turned out," Hisashi said, wiping his eyes. "Without her at my side, I could never have progressed this far." His faith was restored, and he silently observed the still thin All Might leaving. After All Might had disappeared, he returned inside, where Inko had cleaned up the blood and was preparing dinner. "How are you feeling?" As he began chopping up some vegetables to assist her, Hisashi asked. "This is similar to a dream. I simply can't tell if this is a nightmare or a good dream. Given what I now know about All Might, however, Izuku has a chance to become more than just a hero, as he has always desired, and even All Might believes he could be just as great as him. But, sweetheart, be honest with me. Will Izuku be ready before All Might ends?" Inko responded to him. Hisashi took a moment to reflect before responding, "Yes, All Might will do everything in his power to help Izuku and to survive as long as possible." This pleased Inko, and after Izuku finished his homework, they all had dinner together while Inko talked about her day. Hisashi and Izuku's day had already been discussed with All Might. He always finds a way to make the impossible happen. The following day Izuku got up even earlier than usual and began stretching because he wanted to work out before they left to see All Might. Hisashi apparently thought the same thing, because he was already dressed for exercise when Izuku left his room. They quietly put on their weighted vests, wrist and ankle weights, and jogged together as usual. When they got home, they went to the gym, where Izuku worked harder than ever, pushing himself to do one more set of calisthenics than usual and reaching 26 kilograms for his kettlebell workout and 130 kilograms on the barbell. He was exhausted at the end but satisfied. Inko was also up early, preparing breakfast for everyone. "Mom, would you like to join us?" Izuku observed her and inquired. "Sorry, Izuku, but it's way too early to wake up Hisako-chan," Inko said, shaking her head. "And you know how she gets when she's tired." Izuku nodded, took a shower, and then changed into some everyday clothes. Hisashi also changed into a full bodysuit and pants and a red shirt with long sleeves. He never showed his body when he went out due to his scars, even at the beach, and the Midoriyas never visited public bathhouses or onsen because of it. After eating breakfast together, Hisashi made sure to kiss Inko before he and Izuku left. They took a bus to Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, where All Might had asked them to meet, and upon arriving, they saw a terrible wasteland, a beach piled high with trash and trash. This is what happens when people don't clean up after themselves, Hisashi said. It just accumulates, and then you end up with this mess, Hisashi had to say. As he emerged from behind the trash, All Might said in his muscular frame, exactly, adding that no one would notice if the place continued to get messed up. It could serve as a training and practice area. Additionally, you can tidy up the area while you're at it. All Might led them farther into the beach-turned dump after Izuku nodded. Being a hero used to mean something different. As they walked, All Might declared, what mattered wasn't your powers or how flashy you were, what mattered was serving the public. Police, firefighters, first responders, volunteers, all of them used to be called heroes. All right, Midoriya Shonen, I want you to try using one for All Might said to Izuku as they came to a halt in a clearing. Concentrate, squeeze your butt cheeks, and cry out, smash, from the bottom of your heart. Izuku remarked, that sounds kind of vulgar, powers can be kind of messy, Hisashi explained. I only mentioned this to your mom, but using my fire breath makes me feel like I'm having a bad case of heartburn mixed with nausea. When I use it excessively, it can get pretty bad. Before I stopped confusing vomiting with fire breath, I had to practice for a full year. After receiving this information, Izuku nodded and prepared to punch, clenching his fist and butt cheeks as he felt power well up inside his arm and shouting from the bottom of his heart and lungs as he delivered the strongest punch he had ever experienced in his life. SMASH. Kazuto. Hisashi grinned proudly as he and All Might watched as the strong punch ripped through the trash on the beach, forming a tunnel that stretched for kilometers. Izuku, that was incredible. He yelled, only to stop when he heard Izuku groaning. Ah. As he collapsed to his knees, gripping his right arm, it sounded as though he was actually choking on the agony. What's the matter? Hisashi yelled as he went to Izuku and saw his arm was turning a dark red purple. He touched his son's arm, and Izuku finally screamed in pain. Kazo. I believe he has a broken arm. As he prepared to drag Izuku to the hospital, Hisashi yelled, hold on, All Might said, I know someone who can heal him. Simply wait. For the time being, we'll splint his arm. All Might hastily constructed a temporary splint for Izuku's arm before taking out his phone and making a call. You're not calling her, are you, Merda? Hisashi inquired. Do you know of another person who can heal him more quickly? Recovery girl, I'm at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, All Might said, after Hisashi shook his head. Someone is in need of your assistance. He grunted a few times before saying, thank you so much. After he hung up, All Might deflated and spat out some blood, and he said, she'll be here in 15 minutes. I'm sorry for waking you up so early, but this is truly important. Did you just say, recovery girl? Said Izuku. Hisashi swallowed and said, yeah, she's an amazing healer, but she dislikes people who cause themselves too much harm. She's actually going to give it to us, man. Is it possible for me to obtain her signature? Izuku was able to ask despite the pain. All Might and Hisashi chuckled, saying, sure thing, son. A little old woman said, I can't believe it, as she approached the three of them after 15 minutes. You finally give away the power, and you gave it to a kid. And now look at him. He broke his arm and is gone. I'm sorry, All Might replied, I didn't think the backlash would be this serious. Hisashi stood erect and bowed to her, saying, it's good to see you, recovery girl sensei. Hisashi, you've definitely grown up, I said. As she approached him and Izuku, recovery girl remarked, it's hard to believe that the lonely boy who was always buried in a book has become a popular hero. All right, let's see, Sonny. Well, at least you still have your arm. After examining him, recovery girl said, and you look like a healthy young man. I can see why Yagi thought you were ready for his power. She then kissed Izuku on the cheek, causing him to blush. She was the third woman to do so, after his mother and the late grandma Midoriya. He felt and saw the bones in his arms set and heal before his skin tone returned to normal. Thanks, Izuku said, but man, I feel really tired now. He was also worn out. That's how my quirk works, recovery girl clarified. I help your body speed up its natural healing process rather than actually healing you. As a result, it can drain a body of energy. Here's some candy to help you regain your energy. Izuku quickly ate the gummies she had given him and said, thanks, as he stood back up. This could be a problem, All Might stated. I thought your body was prepared for it, but going all out can really mess you up. You appear to need to put in even more effort to fortify your body. I got another idea, Hisashi said. Perhaps Izuku could concentrate on lowering the power instead. Additionally, he can begin to use more power as his body adjusts. I never had an issue with it, but, I suppose, All Might concurred. For me, it was all instinctual. How we can accomplish this for Midoriya Shonen is beyond me. I know what to do, Hisashi said, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. How did that power feel, Izuku? After giving it some thought, Izuku said, it was like, whoosh, and POW, and zoom, all at once. It felt like an adrenaline rush multiplied by a million, something I had never experienced before. And as you prepared, I saw that your arm glowed, as if the power was concentrated, Hisashi said, nodding. Try that again now, but visualize the power coursing through your entire body. Imagine it as the nervous system or blood vessels circulating throughout your body. Now, concentrate on controlling it, just like when we're sparring, Izuku said, nodding and focusing as he felt the power and visualized it flowing through him, causing lines on his body to glow and green crackling energy to spark all over his body. Izuku took a deep breath and felt stronger than before, but he no longer felt as though he was bursting with power. Bring it as low as you can. Looking at Izuku, All Might remarked, I'd say this is about 10% power. Now, I think what you can do is use this power to clear the beach. All Might then increased his muscle mass and smashed a refrigerator like it was an empty soda can. You have 10 months before the UA entrance exams. I want you to clean up this beach and at least double your power output during that time. Do you think you can manage? Izuku gave a nod and said, yes, I am capable. He then went over to a different fridge and lifted it up. It was difficult, but easier than if he didn't have power. Hisashi went to help but All Might stopped him. This is his task. He must power himself and train his body. Let him do it by himself, Hisashi. All right, Hisashi said, nodding. Think of this as your grounding, Izuku. Your free time will be spent here until the beach is cleared. He then reached into his wallet and gave Izuku some cash, saying, use this to get home. We might need to modify your training as well to help you control one for all. We'll deal with that when we get to it. I have to leave for work. Be careful, son. As his father departed to go to his agency, Izuku nodded and said, thanks, Dad. All Might stayed behind to watch Izuku for an hour and made notes in a notebook before telling him, don't push yourself too hard. Your body can be ruined by too much training done too quickly. I also created a training schedule for you that should help you become even more powerful. After looking over All Might's notes, Recovery Girl stated, this should work out just fine. Just remember to rest your tired body and eat enough, Sonny. Izuku said, thank you, ma'am, and took out his notebook. If it's okay with you, may I have your autograph? Do you know how many years it's been since someone asked for my autograph? Laughed Recovery Girl. Well, it appears that you picked a good boy, Yagi. Recovery Girl signed Izuku's notebook before departing, advising him to not push himself too quickly. Recall that you have years to become proficient in this quirk. There is more than enough time. When the garbage was cleared, Izuku spent 2 more hours looking at his work and was sure he got a lot of it, but there was still plenty more to do. Well, we need to head out, All Might said, then he assumed his muscular form. Good luck, Midoriya Shonen. All Might leapt away, almost flying until he was a dot in the sky. Izuku took a few minutes to stretch, and then he took a bus home, reading All Might's notes on his future training. He knew it would be difficult, but he was sure he could do it. Slowly but surely, Izuku grew stronger, tougher, and learned how to use more and more of One for All's incredible power. With the help of the rigorous training and diet All Might had prescribed for him, Izuku did in fact grow over the months. Time went by, and Izuku worked his sorry butt off harder than he had under his father's training regimen. This was all done to strengthen his body to use One for All and become powerful enough to succeed. All Might as the symbol of peace. All Might had given him 10 months to clean up the beach, but Izuku used One for All to get rid of all the trash, litter, and pollution from Dagoba Municipal Beach Park in just 6 months. He even doubled his power during that time, allowing him to use 20% of All Might's quirk's full power. Izuku told Melissa that he was a late bloomer and that his quirk showed up with puberty, which was uncommon but not unheard of for some quirks to do so. He was consumed with guilt about lying to his friend, but he had vowed not to tell his secret. Izuku was registered with the government as having a quirk called Superpower, which gradually accumulated power before being unleashed with spectacular results. This was All Might's idea, and it appeared to be effective. Izuku continued sparring with Maki and his father, and he had improved his fighting skills. Izuku, from now on when you spar Maki, you'll both use your quirks, his father said after the beach had been cleared. How about you and me, Dad? Izuku inquired. I can't control my fire as well as Maki, Hisashi said, shaking his head. Even if it touches you, it won't cause any serious harm because she can cool it to 30 degrees Celsius. Over the next 4 months, you must learn how to fight with your quirk and how to fight someone who has one. In addition, Maki has significantly improved over the past 3 years. She will be extremely difficult for you to handle. He had a training room that was ideal for practicing his and Maki's fire quirks, so Izuku and Maki agreed and went to Hisashi's hero agency to have a safe place to spar with their quirks. Man, it's hard to believe it's been almost 4 years, Maki said with a smile when they first met in the training room. You've definitely matured since then. Izuku-chan, I'll give you a very special treat if you can defeat me. I will share my greatest treasure with you. What are your thoughts? All right, Maki-ne-chan, Izuku said, nodding. I'll try my hardest. Izuku concentrated on one for all and felt the energy pulsing through his body. So that's your superpower quirk, huh? Maki smiled and whistled as she noticed the power crackling around him. It appears ostentatious. However, I'm also quite ostentatious. Maki told Izuku. I'm controlling the power, so I won't burn you, but treat this like you'd melt if I touch you. Tart orange flames appeared from Maki's back, while claw-like flames appeared over her fingertips and ear-like flames appeared over her head. Izuku said, got it, and they got ready to fight. Maki went on all fours, like a cat, and Izuku prepared to charge at her with all of his speed. Maki ran at him, and Izuku was taken aback. Did Maki-ne-chan slow down? She swiped at him, but Izuku easily dodged her and jumped back in time to avoid one of the fiery tails from her back. She swiped her tails at him, and Izuku avoided them. Izuku had never sparred her in this way before, but he had never used his quirk in a fight either. Maki herself claimed that he had surpassed her physical strength, but she always had the advantages of speed, technique, and experience that meant he had never beaten her or his father before. After that, Izuku had a crazy idea and stood motionless. Maki threw her tails at him, and Izuku used 20% of one for all's power to clap his hands together. The force of the clap sent a small shockwave, and Maki gasped as her flames were scattered. Izuku then charged at her, and she barely avoided a kick from him. Izuku used his advantage to throw a barrage of punches at her, and she moved as quickly as she could to deflect his blows, but he was moving too quickly for her to counterattack. Maki gasped in surprise as he rounded up for a punch, but he stopped his fist a centimeter from crushing her nose. Izuku then saw that she hadn't protected her legs, swept her feet out from under her, then leapt on top of her, and then grinned as he tapped her nose and exclaimed, "Boop." Maki then started laughing and exclaimed, "Holy cow, Izuku-kun. You've matured quite well. I felt like a rookie all over again. However, champ, I believe you became a bit overly excited there. Would you mind letting go?" Izuku screamed and released his hold, realizing that he had grabbed her boob instead of her left shoulder as he had intended. "I'm very sorry, I swear I didn't mean to do it." With a laugh, Maki stood up and said, "Izuku-kun, I recognize you. You're not the type of guy who approaches women and tries to get them. However, you should definitely practice your technique again because we don't want you to develop a bad habit. A promise is a promise, regardless." As she led him to the locker rooms, Izuku swallowed, unsure of what she would give him, and realized that their relationship had changed. Kotatsu Maki, also known as Hellcat, no longer viewed him as a young boy but rather as a man. "When I was a little girl, I was kidnapped by sex traffickers," Maki started, "and two incredible heroes, Phoenix-sama and Mirko-sama, saved me and the other kids." Maki reached into her locker and took out her gym bag, then reached inside the gym bag and took out what initially appeared to be a credit card. "Seeing Phoenix-sama and Mirko-sama defeat the sex traffickers is something I will always remember. After that, I knew I was safe when your father picked me up. In addition, I noticed Mirko standing atop a whole stack of villains." Maki then showed off her strength by flexing her bicep. "Ever since that day, I knew that I wanted to be like those two heroes, someone strong and kind," she said. "Years ago, when I was in high school, I got a stroke of luck and got to meet one of my personal heroes, and I managed to get Mirko to give me her autograph. Every time I thought I wasn't good enough, I'd always look at it and remember never to give up. Now, I'm giving it to you. I hope it'll help you in your hero career too." As she presented the laminated autograph of the number 6 hero, the rabbit hero, Mirko, the highest-ranking female hero, Izuku was rendered speechless. He looked at it and managed to say, "Are you sure I deserve this?" Maki nodded and grinned, and Izuku took her most valuable possession. Maki warned Izuku, "All right, I need you to get out now. I need to change to go out on patrol, and you already got to second base, I'm not giving you a show too. And he hurried off, red as a tomato. As he was leaving, he heard his father say over the phone, "Thank you very much, Kotatsu-san. I'm sure Maki will be thrilled when she sees what she's getting." He was asked by Izuku, "What's going on?" Hisashi laughed and continued, "I've got a surprise for Maki. It's her 22nd birthday next Saturday, and I intend to give her a great birthday present. Something she's wanted for most of her life. Plus, I'm going to get your mom something. Next Saturday, we're going to go enjoy the restored Dagoba Beach." Izuku nodded and left for home. After sparring with Izuku in the gym, Hisashi revealed his surprise to Inko when he got home. Izuku had to control his rage as he saw the two tiny bikinis that made his wife flush. Despite complaining that her thighs and belly were still too soft, Inko had lost a lot of weight over the past 2 years and could now wear the majority of her old clothes from when Izuku was younger. The bikinis were excessive, even though she undoubtedly received compliments on her appearance. She would be arrested for public indecency if she wore one of them, which is kindly described as strings with a few patches. The other one had a small thong bottom that would expose everything if she knelt down too much, but it would cover more of her chest. When she recovered, Inko then flashed a very dangerous smile, and Hisashi realized he had made a mistake. After stealing both of his bikinis, Inko went to the kitchen, covered the string bikini with oil, and set it on fire. "The next time you let your horny teenage ideas out like this, you can sleep on the couch for the next month," she said, turning to face her husband. "Understood," Hisashi said, looking more deflated. "Honestly, where did you even get that one? It's not even legal in public," she said. "Well, Midnight and I go back a little bit, and she was willing to help her senpai out," Hisashi said, rubbing the back of his head. "I'll wear a bikini, one that I choose though. Honestly, we need to think about what the neighbors would say if I dressed like a tramp." Inko sighed, and after this brief incident, she purchased her own swimsuit. Maki and the Midoriya family spent the following Saturday at Dagoba Beach, where Hisashi proudly informed Maki that Izuku had cleared it all by himself to master his quirk. Izuku had a pair of green swim trunks, Hisashi wore a black bodysuit as he usually did at such events, Hisako wore a blue baby onesie and beach floaties, and Inko found a more subdued light pink bikini to wear. Izuku had to fight the urge to stare at Maki when they first met at the beach. The young lady had made the decision to flaunt her incredibly toned and muscular body in a bright purple bikini that exposed more skin than his mother's without being offensive. Maki ran up to them and exclaimed, "Hey guys." A tall, thinner man with teal-colored hair and glasses approached with a cooler. "Hello," the man said to the Midoriya family, "I'm Hirota Naoda, Maki's fiancé. It's a pleasure to meet you." Although Maki had been talking about dating a paramedic for years, Izuku had never heard of her engagement until now. Hisashi shook hands with Hirota Naoda and said, "Nice to meet you. This is my wife, Inko. This is our son, Izuku. This is our daughter, Hisako. This is Midoriya Hisashi, Maki's mentor, Phoenix." In addition to shaking hands with Hisashi and Inko, Hirota Naoda said, "So, you're the famous Izuku. Maki-chan told me that you were working to be a hero. You certainly got the build for it." "Yeah," Izuku responded, though she didn't say anything about being engaged. As Maki displayed her left hand in the gleaming gold ring set with 3 diamonds, Naoda grinned alongside her and said, "Well, it only became official last night." "So, when's the wedding?" Hisashi asked with a smile. "Next year, so we can tell our families and get everything ready," Maki said. "Of course you're all invited too." From behind Maki, an older male voice asked, "What about us?" Maki yelled, "Mom, Dad, Manjiro, Koichi," as everyone turned to watch. She rushed up, hugged her parents, and raised them up. Izuku could see that Maki's mother had given her the majority of her appearance. She had long, dark hair and cat ears, while Maki's father had pink eyes and a tiny, fiery halo over his bald head. Both of her younger brothers resembled Maki, with the exception that Koichi had a fiery halo over his head and Manjiro, the middle son, had cat ears like their mother. During the introductions, Izuku discovered that Maki's father was named Kato and her mother was named Kuroko. Soon after, the Kotatsu and Midoriya families got together and started a barbecue. As they celebrated Maki's engagement and birthday, everyone was having a great time. They all engaged in beach activities, such as splashing each other in the water, building sandcastles, and smashing watermelons. Manjiro and Koichi attempted to frighten their older sister by searching for sea cucumbers and sea louses, but their mother intervened. The Kotatsus brought some chips and burgers and hot dogs, and there was a birthday cake that was just large enough for everyone to eat a piece. While cooking, Hisashi displayed his fire breath, which Maki's fiancé and both of her younger brothers found entertaining. I think I'm ready to give you your birthday present, Hisashi said to Maki after everyone had finished eating. Maki said to him, you really didn't need to, sir. He took a manila envelope from his bag and said, I think you'll like this one. Maki accepted it, took out a piece of paper from the envelope, and then stopped. After asking her, what is it, Maki-chan? Noda gasped upon seeing what was written on the paper. Maki grinned as her eyes began to well up with silent tears. For almost my entire life, she said, wiping away her tears only to have more joyful ones fall, I've dreamed of this. I worked so hard, studied even though I hate studying, pushed myself further than I ever thought I could. She became so emotional that she was unable to speak as she showed her family the paper. Everyone applauded, and Izuku grinned after figuring out what it was. Since his father had approved of her, Maki was now a recognized hero. Hisashi informed her, there's one more thing in the envelope. After drawing out a check and taking a deep breath, Maki revealed what was on the check. The amount on the check was 50 million yen. Maki was able to exclaim, sir, I can't take this much, at last. Hisashi placed a hand on her shoulder and said, you can, and you will. I remember how hard it is to get your own hero agency started. Think of this as a combination of severance pay and back pay for all the times you babysat Izuku and Hisako. Plus helping me train my son. You have an amazing quirk, and the true heart of a hero. All I ask is that you give it your all. Maki nodded enthusiastically and said, I will, sir. Soon after, everyone was exhausted and began to go home. However, Kato and Kuroko, Maki's parents, visited Hisashi before departing. Phoenix-sama, Kato said, I just want you to know, as one man to another, that I can never thank you enough for all that you've done for my daughter. When she was stolen from us 13 years ago, we nearly lost all hope. You brought her back to us, and helped give her a dream that she has finally fulfilled. This is the happiest I've ever seen her, thank you. In response to the Kotatsu's bow, Hisashi said, I want to thank you as well, Kato-san, Kuroko-san, for raising such an amazing daughter. Teaching her how to be a hero has been one of my greatest honors as a hero, and a man. She will go far in this world. Before departing with Naoda, Maki embraced Hisashi and Inko, saying, thank you, for everything, Hisashi-sama, Inko-sama. She then gathered Izuku in an embrace and remarked, you have more brains than I do, Izuku, while tapping his forehead. But don't forget to use your heart as well. She then tapped his chest and grinned before departing with her fiancé. The remainder of the day flew by, and Izuku had a good night's sleep. Nevertheless, Izuku heard voices in his dream. So, this is the ninth wielder. Hard to believe that his grandson would have our power. One of the female voices said, no one can choose the family they are born into, while the other voices were male. When can we appear to him? This male voice sounded far weaker than the others. He cannot see us, yet, he needs more time. For now, let us watch over him, and try to do what we can for him, it said. With a grunt, a deeper male voice said, you're lucky kid, you got 8 guardian angels watching over you.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.